take long to find alternatives. They're also on the lookout for new markets and new users, which means any countries which don't have a problem now might not stay that way. Back to our final expert witness, Vanda Felbab-Brown.
The world is going through a global synthetic drugs revolution. Every part of the world, from Asia, where meth is currently the biggest problem, to the Middle East, where Captagon is an issue, North America, it's synthetic opioids. In my view, in a matter of time, synthetic opioids will spread around the world.
This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producers were Vicky Carter and Matt Tolson, researcher Ajay Singh, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Cameron Ward.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. You're on 89.3. Let's go right to our news center for headlines this morning. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Well, thousands of Winnipeg Jets fans flooded downtown Winnipeg again last night for a second whiteout street party, and is leading some to wonder why the city doesn't stage more events like this downtown. Jets fan Carson Lowe says more people should come downtown on nights when there aren't Jets games. He says people worry about safety, but it's just a matter of getting out of your comfort zone. We'll hear more reaction to the whiteout street party and the Winnipeg Jets loss last night. That's coming up as well. A new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It is called the Out of Custody Youth Intake Court, and we'll hear all about it in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So that sets our day with headlines. You're listening to Information Radio, as mentioned. This is the morning show on air until 8:37 a.m. on CBC, 89.3, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. And thanks for being with us. And if you need us in traffic, should be a good spring drive, 788-3093. The weather's going to be gorgeous. The sky is super clear already in downtown Winnipeg, and we're heading to a high of 17 degrees in the sunshine today. Good morning to the team as well. You heard from Heather Wells in our news center. Corey Funk directs the program, and we'll cover the commute on air. Good morning, Corey. Good morning to Brad Lilly's also behind the glass this morning in our control room. And good morning finally to Abby Adiyemi, who's here too, our technical producer, who will be covering the forecasts on air through the program. So we talked about the Jets. We're going to hear more from the fans last night and how the mood went from woo with a goal 3 minutes into, oh no, yeah, we lost this one, but can't win them all. So off to Colorado go the Jets. We're going to hear more of that excitement from last night. Also, women in professional sport will be the topic of a conversation in the first hour. There's a new survey that says Canadians aged 13 to 65, of that group of 2/3 consider themselves fans of professional women's sport. So we're going to talk more about that and how the climate is shifting around that. On our mental health column today, how do you feel about birthdays? They're complicated for a lot of us mentally. So Mark Hennick, today is his birthday, just happens to be. And he's going to join us to talk all about that in the first hour of the show. So stay tuned. That and much more. But first, World Report at 6.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Up first, it's the one and only Jimbo.
Jimbo the drag clown got her revenge for getting dumped out of Drag Race Canada by winning Drag Race All-Stars. So Jimbo will be here to tell you about her new tour, how she mixes the art of clown with drag, and why she likes throwing bologna at her audience. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. More than a third of the police officers suspended in Ontario over the past decade faced allegations of gender-based violence. CBC has been digging through the data. It shows paid police suspensions have cost Ontario taxpayers more than $135 million. But victims of intimate partner crimes say there's more to the problem than just money. Julie Ireton reports.
He wanted to harm me.
She's an Ontario police sergeant talking about her ex-husband, a constable. CBC has agreed not to reveal her name for her own protection. In 2019, there was a confrontation at home. He was arrested and suspended and eventually convicted of intercepting her private communications. Other charges were dropped. She stayed in policing, but she says she got little support.
No one came to me and said, okay, We've rallied the troops. This is what to expect. This is how you go back to work. None of that happened.
Her ex-husband is one of more than 400 officers across 44 Ontario police departments who've been suspended with pay over the past decade. More than a third of the allegations against those cops were for gender-based violence, including domestic abuse, sexual assault, and harassment. The numbers don't surprise Danielle McNabb. She's an assistant professor of criminal justice policy at Brock University in St. Catharines.
Police are disproportionately perpetrators of gender-based violence, particularly domestic violence. I do think that this really constitutes the tip of the iceberg. From what we know about the pervasive underreporting of gender-based violence.
The president of the Police Association of Ontario reviewed CBC's data showing the rates of police officers accused of gender-based violence. Mark Baxter says in those types of incidents, the union's role is to support everyone involved. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The U.S. Senate passed a new military aid package. Senators voted last night to approve the $95 billion in aid going to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. President Joe Biden is expected to sign the bill into law later today. The Senate also voted in favor of a bill that would ban the popular app TikTok in the U.S. The CBC's Richard Madden has more on that. And Richard, what can you tell us about this bill?
Yeah, few issues unite a divided Congress than taking on big tech. And in this case, we saw a rare showing of bipartisan support. The Senate passed a bill that will now force TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, that's owned by the Chinese government, 9 months to sell the app to a non-Chinese owner. If not, it would be banned from U.S. app stores or hosting companies. Now, U.S. lawmakers briefed by intelligence agencies have long warned the Chinese government could access TikTok's user data to spy on Americans or spread propaganda or disinformation. Now, TikTok is wildly popular. More than 170 million Americans use it for entertainment or as an income source. But FBI Director Christopher Wray is sounding the alarms. Take a listen.
TikTok, for us, represents a national security concern. And the reason I say that is that TikTok's parent company is beholden to the Chinese government.
Now, under this bill, the earliest a ban would start would be January next year, notably after November's election. TikTok will likely be a major force during the election campaign for candidates to reach younger voters, so delaying the ban may help politicians avoid the backlash.
This bill has been in the works for some time. What are we hearing from TikTok?
Yeah, they're preparing for a legal fight with plans to challenge it in court under the First Amendment. That's according to a staff memo from TikTok's American executives over the weekend. But under this bill, President Biden could extend the deadline by another 3 months, possibly longer, if a sale is underway, so it gives TikTok some time.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. And just as the U.S. Senate was in session, Jewish anti-war protesters were staging a large protest outside Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer's house. They called for the U.S. government to stop funding Israel's war in Gaza. About 300 people were arrested. There were more demonstrations overnight at Columbia University. Police told protesters to clear out by midnight, but they refused to leave. The Supreme Court in the U.S. will hear arguments today in a case involving the state of Idaho and abortions. Idaho is one of several states that bans the procedures with some exceptions. But a federal law requires hospitals to deliver emergency care. That includes abortions. Freelance reporter Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
When do we want it? Freedom! When do we want it? Now!
Protests against abortion bans have become commonplace in America ever since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade nearly 2 years ago. That very court is now set to decide on a case that could limit abortion care during medical emergencies. At issue in Moyle versus United States is whether a federal law requiring hospitals to provide stabilizing treatment, including abortions in emergency situations, preempts Idaho law, which only allows abortions to save the life of the mother. Joseph Koza is an assistant teaching professor at Rice University.
The federal statute covers more than just death. So it's a big question around when can doctors intervene? Do they have to wait till the patient is on the brink of death, or can they intervene sooner?
Doctors in Idaho face up to 5 years in prison if convicted of performing an illegal abortion. The court's ruling is expected at the end of June, and the ramifications could be widespread. 14 states now ban the procedure, including Texas, where a court earlier this year ruled doctors don't need to perform emergency abortions. And there have been reports of pregnant women being turned away from emergency rooms. If the court rules in Idaho's favor, abortion access could become even more restricted, even in the most restrictive states. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
Farmers from the state of Tamil Nadu, India, are holding protests as they demand better compensation for their crops. Some carry skulls and bones to symbolize the farmers who have died by suicide. They say the situation is dire. They want India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, to follow through on his past election promises. One was to double the price of their produce.
Nobody bothered about the farmers. During the election, we are the backbone of India. After the election, they think that we are the slaves of India.
This latest round of farmers' protests comes as millions of Indians head to the polls for the country's elections. Australian police say they've arrested 7 teenagers in relation to a stabbing at a church. David Hudson is Deputy Commissioner of New South Wales Police.
We're talking 15, 16, 17-year-olds. The terrorism landscape and the radicalisation of youth online is a continuing problem for us.
He says the teens are accused of following an extremist ideology, and they're part of a network that includes the 16-year-old boy who is accused of stabbing a bishop in a Sydney church last week. Officials say the teens were considered an immediate threat, but investigators have found no evidence of specific targets for violent acts. Tesla's revenues have taken a big dive. The electric car giant released its quarterly results yesterday. Its earnings are down more than half over last year. Senior business reporter Anis Hadari tells us the company is making moves now to try to turn its fortunes around.
There's been a lot of talk about our upcoming vehicle line.
Elon Musk is telling Tesla investors expect new, more affordable models by 2025, maybe even this year.
So it's not contingent on any new factory or massive new production line. It'll be made on our current production lines much more efficiently.
Announcements like that are part of why Tesla stock shot up on Tuesday night after the closing bell rang. Because certainly Tesla's actual results in the first quarter weren't anything to celebrate. Net income down 55% compared to last year.
Tesla is finally acting like a car company.
Auto industry analyst Sam Furani says even though Tesla lost more money than experts predicted, the stock price might be going up because the company now says new models are coming sooner.
Their Model S is well over 12 years old now. Tesla needs to have these changes.
Musk also talked up self-driving robocars that you can hire, kind of like hailing an Uber. But Furani says realistically, that's years away.
There's a lot of stuff that Elon Musk has said that the company is focusing on in this period where there's not a lot to crow about on the automotive side.
That automotive side includes less demand for Tesla's electric vehicles, which may be why the company said yesterday it's cutting more than 6,000 jobs. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. Welcome to what's going to be one of the mildest days of the entire week here. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I am Marcy Marcusa, and this is CBC. It is clear out there in downtown Winnipeg this morning. Clear of fans who were at last night's street party watching the Winnipeg Jets. Hey, you can't win them all. We'll hear more about how the game went and how the emotions went up and down on the streets of Winnipeg. So we'll take you to the Whiteout Party. Also in this hour of the show, speaking of sport, a new report lends insight into the level of excitement for women's sport in Canada. We're going to talk to one of the project leads that's been looking into this. And then at 10 to 7, how do you feel about your birthday? That's actually a complicated question and answer. We'll talk birthday celebrations and how they contribute to our sense of self. That's on our mental health column just before 7. complicated. All right, let's get into what else is happening in the news this morning with headlines and more details on other stories. Here's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, a new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called the Out of Custody Youth Intake Court, and the goal is to get young people in front of a judge fast so they can get the help they need sooner. We're going to hear all about that coming up. As well, Manitoba Public Insurance has axed 32 people from its management team. The cuts come on the heels of an external review. It found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at the Crown Corporation. We'll hear more about that in our next local news at 6:30.
Did you catch any of the game, Heather?
You know what? I have to confess I did not. I had little kids in my house, so yeah, did not get to the game.
It was exciting to start right out the gate, 3 minutes in, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Well, even in the second period, I mean, there was that Shifley goal was beautiful.
Oh yeah. It wasn't a bad game. It was just a game where it's like, okay, they outshot us in the first game 2-1. So some of those got through this time, and then we just couldn't get them through their goalie, who honestly, when he stepped back out on the ice last night, I was just like, imagine being him.
Yeah.
Right. So all right, we'll see how they respond, I guess, and we'll take you to the whiteout party in a moment. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather is with us, of course, throughout the morning, as are my friends, the guys.
Hi.
Good morning.
We need a nickname for you two. I don't know what it is, but Abby Adeyemi and Corey Funk. How are you two this morning, Corey?
Doing good.
Pretty good. It's just, for me, it's chilly outside, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny. I said we're heading for one of the warmest days of the week, but you're right that we're not necessarily starting that way. What do we have in the weather?
Yeah, across the province, just take out Winnipeg and Dauphin. Every other part is like below freezing points. Currently, Winnipeg is at 0 and under clear skies. That's what we're seeing across board. Today's weather is actually looking quite pleasant, just as you mentioned. We're expecting sunny skies and then the wind becoming south and gusting near noon. The high for today is expected to reach 17, so it's going to be warm today. Now, as we look ahead to tonight, a few clouds are expected with the winds shifting from the south and then becoming light. And tomorrow is more like what I'm really, really waiting for, because we can anticipate a beautiful day tomorrow. It includes lots of sunny skies and a mix of sun and clouds developing near noon tomorrow. And then we're going to be getting to a high of 22. So double digits, 22. I will take that. Winnipeg is actually warming up today. Yesterday, I would say, was a bit chilly, but we're heading to 17 today. Dauphin is at 3 degrees. Brandon and Moore is at -4. Thompson, Gimli, Steinbach, all hovering around -3, and Churchill is at -10. Brr. But right now, Winnipeg, we are. I just have I'm done with minus.
You're done with
double,
-10.
like minus double digits.
Yeah.
I can just.
Well,
talk.
Churchill's not.
Yeah, Churchill's like -10. No, I can't do that.
Tomorrow, Abby's right. Tomorrow's looking like it'll be the warmest day of the week, but today will be nice later. And yesterday, it was a little bit chilly. It was the wind, I think. It just spoils the party on these spring days. Let's get into what's happening in traffic. Corey, what's today looking like from your perspective?
Yes, so far, a pretty straightforward commute. Haven't heard any major issues. Whiteout party's all cleaned up, so should be smooth sailing more or less downtown. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
So we're going to start with hockey, with thousands and thousands of people, both inside downtown and outside on the street last night for the whiteout party. They were all starting in a great mood, but let's talk about how that mood shifted during the game. Actually, let's hear how it shifted. The Jets, of course, going into last night over Colorado for Game 2, had won the first game, 7-6 though, and then before that, you got to remember, they were on a run. So this was the first loss after 9 wins in a row for the Jets. It's also the first loss they had to Colorado all season. So the question will be, how are they going to respond? But here's a bit of the mood last night after the loss. We're going to start with CBC's Jim Agapito, who was there to capture everything from the start to the end.
Are you guys excited for the game?
Yeah, we are! We're so excited! Let's go, Jets! Delana Zimmerman!
Delana, I gotta ask, the game is about to start. How excited are you right now to be here?
I'm pumped! You know, atmosphere, the energy, it's so good right now. It's really good. It's really high.
And what are you hoping happens tonight?
I'm hoping the Jets win. That's what we're all hoping. Jets are going to bring it home. They're going to win.
My full name is Daniel Alexander Barrows. Daniel, you saw the last goal. What's your reaction to the last goal? I think we have the best penalty kill in the whole league, and I think the whiteout is the best tradition in all of sports history. We love the Jets, we love the community, and we come to these games and we know we're gonna win, because that's what our team does. My name is Braden Connor Rebeck. They just scored a goal. What went wrong there? What happened?
You know, I'm looking at it right now. It's honestly, for Hellbuck, it's not his fault. It's a tough deflection. You know, we got to bounce back from it. You know, honestly, we're 2-2 right now, and you know who's going to score next? Adam Lowry. That's all I got to say.
Alessandra Pellegrino. Christina Colatriglio.
It's down right now. It's the third period. It's 4-2. How are you guys feeling right now?
I'm a little disappointed, but I mean, there is time left, so I'm feeling positive that we can come back.
Now, the energy here has been quite impressive. What's it like to be at the whiteout right now? You know?
Super fun. Well, it's nice to see the community all getting together and supporting the Jets. If there were more events like these, I feel like getting community together, I feel like it would bring more people to downtown. Agreed. Hayden Griffiths.
How old are you?
9.
How do you feel being at the whiteout watching a Jets game?
Very good. This is my first time. I thought it'd be scary, but now it's not.
The Jets are down right now 4-2. What do you think's going to happen?
I think they're going to score 2 goals, and then they're going to get a goal in overtime and win the game.
I mean, it is late. It's a school night, but how do you feel about being up? I don't know if it's past your bedtime, but being here right now.
I feel very great. I don't know what's going to happen about school. I'm probably going to be late.
Was it worth it, though, to watch the Jets?
Yeah. Go, Jets, go!
My name is Carson Lowe. Carson, there's less than 5 minutes of the game left. We're losing to Colorado 4-2. How are you feeling?
You know, it's difficult. Over the regular season, we're a better team, but this type of stuff happens, and we just got to kind of battle back, and hopefully we can pull out a win here today.
What's going wrong right now?
I'd say the defense has been pretty sloppy. We're struggling to get the puck out of our own zone, and we're paying for it, obviously, right? We're giving up easy goals and just sloppy mistakes that really shouldn't be happening. At the moment, we got to tighten up the defense and make the offensive possession count. We've got 4 minutes left in the game. Every single shot's going to count as much, you know, it's going to count so much. So we gotta really dial in here.
Justin St. Laurent. Honestly, it was a tough battle for the boys tonight. I hate to say it, but some poor defending on the Winnipeg end. Just not there tonight. But overall, great game, great atmosphere here at the Whiteout. No complaints whatsoever. Still a great game. Hoping for a late one here to bring the game back together, but as of right now, it just stands where it is.
Moving forward, what do the Jets need to do to win this series?
We need to play strong in the away barn. Colorado's a difficult barn to play in just because of the altitude. So the boys need to bring it there for sure.
Kane Ryland.
Jets are going to lose this game. What went wrong here?
You know, we had the lead early, but we just let it fall through. They came back, scored 2 in the last, with like 9 seconds left to make it 4-2. I think going into Colorado, we have a deep team, so I think we can pull through and win this series. I think we just got to get 4-line contributing. Scheifele and Velarde and Connor have been going through the whole series so far, but I think the other 3 lines got to get going. Playoffs, it depends on depth and goaltending and defense.
Thanks so much.
So some pretty good analysis, actually, and you can just hear the mood, right? How loud it was at the beginning downtown in Winnipeg last night at the Whiteout Party, and then how quiet things got at the end. That was CBC's Jim Agapito working the crowd. Thank you, Jim. Jim pulled a late one. You can imagine he was here till after 2 a.m. The Jets lost 4-2 last night. The first away game of the series comes on Friday night in Colorado.
They're out there, they're convincing, and they want your money. Wednesday on Radio Noon, we're talking about scammers, how to recognize them, and how to shut them down. I'm Janet Stewart. Sergeant Dana McCullum of the Brandon Police Service joins us with advice for protecting the people you love. How have scammers come after you? Call our listener line 204-788-3797. Then join us Wednesday for Radio Noon.
6:22 a.m. now. It's mainly clear in downtown Winnipeg. It is calm, and winds are calm, that is. The temperature is 0, and we're heading for a high of 17. Brandon's -5, Thompson's -4, and next on the show, let's continue talking about sport from a different perspective. There has been a lot of enthusiasm for elite women's sport. Record attendance at professional women's hockey league games recently, including last Saturday's game in front of 21,000 fans at Bell Centre between Montreal and Toronto. That, plus, of course, the WNBA draft, basketball stars like Caitlin Clark and Canada's Alia Edwards, and lots of people just so excited about women's sports. I also watch a ton of women's golf. Go Brooke Henderson, go. A new survey backs all of this up, suggesting that 2/3 of Canadians between the ages of 13 and 65 are fans of professional women's sport. The research was overseen by the advocacy group Canadian Women in Sport and led by IMI Consulting. And to talk about it, Sarah Stovold is with us this morning, Senior Vice President at IMI, the co-lead on the project. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. How are you?
I'm well. So I gave the sort of the top line of the study, but what were the other key insights that you found when you looked at this?
It was very, very exciting for the very first time to be able to understand what fandom looks like in Canada for women's professional sports. Before this study, it didn't actually exist. It wasn't something that brands could ask for and obtain in terms of whether or not this made sense to invest in. So we spoke to 2,000 Canadians across the country, and it was surprising that not only do we have 17 million Canadian fans of women's sport, but they're people across all different backgrounds, different ages. It's not just women watching women's sports, but yes, go Brooke Henderson. Men are actually the larger bucket. So 53% of the fan base is men, and then 46% women, 1% gender diverse. It's younger people, it's older people, it's people of diverse backgrounds. These are well-educated, affluent, really good humans. So there's a pretty exciting opportunity to connect and capitalize on that new market.
Now, we talked about hockey, women's professional hockey. What are your hopes for the expansion of other women's pro leagues in Canada, like basketball, for example?
Well, this proves out that there is a market for it. And the fact that we're able to make this information so accessible, we do hope that it enables different prospective owners or teams or brands or sponsors, other media companies, or the myriad of other investors that ultimately are required to make this market really come to life, that this proves the demand is there. And now the conversation is, how do we meet that demand? How do we capitalize on it to really produce the greatest possible commercial and social benefits in Canada?
How was the study itself conducted?
So we did an online study. And as I said, connected with 2,000 Canadians. That's representative across every province and territory. We spoke to Quebecers in English and French. And so it really was comprehensive and wide-ranging so that we could make sure to get input from everyone at every level.
Now, we've already started to also talk right now, this came up in sports, I think, yesterday, about the huge difference in what female players, women players rather, in sport and men are paid. Last week, I think it was Scotty Scheffler they were comparing, who's on a tear in men's golf, to in the States, Korda. I'm going to get her first name wrong. Natalie Korda, I believe I've got her first name right. They're sisters there. Anyway, she's been on a tear as well in women's golf. But they're paid drastically different amounts of money. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars in differences. So that's a critical aspect of the conversation. People are referring to it also as the Caitlin Clark effect in pay equity. How does understanding fan base contribute to a new business model?
Well, ultimately, I mean, the notion of equity is super important across the board, and particularly as we have this new opportunity to develop something from the ground up in Canada. How can we take all the learnings and the lessons that have been formed from decades of work? And it is important to recognize that those leagues, those teams have existed in some cases for hundreds of years. They've got quite an advantage in terms of breadth and tenure. They've been around for a long time, and they've had a long time to establish the business of sport as well. And so as we think about not just making sports more safe and inclusive for girls and women at all levels, but it's taking the information that has been uncovered in this report and leapfrogging some of the potential areas that have challenged sport in this country. Pay equity is, of course, a really important part of that. We really need to build the ecosystem of women's sports in order to address that piece. So we have to invest in broadcast. We have to make it more accessible. We have to put it out into the world at a quality that people are expecting and used to. And so we have to really build the entire ecosystem, and pay equity is going to be a part that, in my hope and estimation, that will be addressed along the journey.
So much of why women's sport hasn't been invested in up to now in a bigger way has been put on, or why the athletes aren't paid higher, the women like Nelly Korda, I'm going to correct myself, but has been put on the fact that the advertisers haven't been there. But it's sort of a chicken and egg thing at this point, is it, according to what you're hearing about how the fan base is growing?
Yeah, I mean, historically, there's been a perception of risk associated with investing in women's sports for a lot of reasons, and some of that does have to do with the biases that we've had in pressing our societies and in the sports system, but really it hasn't historically placed a lot of value on women's sports. And so this report also looks at how women's sports are perceived, and actually it's at the exact same level as men's, as traditional sports. And so we also looked at how people define and think about women's sports compared to traditional. It's equally exciting, it's equally high quality, it's equally energetic, but women's sports actually has a bit of a leg up because it's seen as more inclusive, more welcoming, and it's growing. And so this report also debunks a lot of the myths that have historically provided a bit of pause in terms of whether or not this made sense. And what this really proves is that it's not just good for business, but it can be amazing for society as well. And the report is available for free at womeninsport.ca, and we do hope that it is read and digested widely and shared so that it can enable as many people as possible.
All right, Sarah, thanks for the conversation.
Really appreciate it. Take care, Marcy.
Yeah, you too. Sarah Stovall is a Senior Vice President at IMI Consulting and co-lead on the project. We reached her this morning in Toronto, and I'd love to hear from you about women's sport. I know some folks that say, I don't want to watch women's sport. It is different, and they're comparing it to the men, and they feel like there's differences in sort of the athletic ability, or maybe how far or fast, or the nature of the sport. And I always think to myself, it's the same game, and if there's differences, it's because we're looking at men and women's sport. But can you appreciate it from a different point of view as well? And in some sports, it's not different at all. So I'm just wondering sort of what holds you back from getting into watching women's sport? And if you're a big fan, what got you into it and what was the sport? Love to hear from you on the listener line.
A British spy has one with an ejector seat.
Ejector seat? You're joking.
I never joke about my work, 007.
A VW bug transforms into a hero.
You must protect Earth.
And then there's Steve McQueen.
You work your side of the street, and I'll work mine.
Cars are the stars. Automobile brands in Hollywood on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
It is coming up to 6:30 here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on that app as mentioned. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Brad and Abby and Corey behind the glass. Your drive this morning, pretty good. 788-3093. And speaking of driving, coming up, a new outlook for electric vehicles has been released from the International Energy Agency, and we're going to hear all about it from Christely Ramlakan, who's going to join us with our daily business news, as always, via Zoom, and we'll connect up with her right after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's clear. It's still a little chilly. It's 0 right now outside. The sun is going to shine, and that south breeze is going to warm us up today above seasonal, a high this afternoon of 17. A new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called the Out of Custody Youth Intake Court. The goal is to get young people in front of a judge fast so they can get the help they need sooner, and to show them the court is taking their case seriously without intimidating them. Lawyer Hilary Tash.
We want to let them know that even if they have been in trouble before, they can do better in the future and that no one has given up on them.
The youth court sits about twice a month. Since it started last year, there has been a drop in the number of youth cases going to trial. Manitoba Public Insurance has eliminated 32 people from its management team. The cuts come on the heels of an external review. It found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at the Crown Corporation. MPI won't say how many people have been laid off, but the public insurer says the majority of the reduction was met by holding vacancies, not filling them, and, quote, right-sizing roles. The positions eliminated represent 18% of the previous size of management. To the U.S.
On this vote, the yeas are 79. The nays are 18. The motion to concur in the House amendment is agreed to.
The Senate last night passed a $95 billion military aid package. The money is earmarked for wartime assistance in Israel, for humanitarian relief for the citizens of Gaza, for Ukraine and Taiwan. The vote passed after months of delays and debates. President Joe Biden is expected to sign that bill into law later today. He's also expected to sign a bill that could ban TikTok. The bill offers the app's Chinese parent company two choices: to sell or be shut down in the U.S. Now, CBC News has obtained video footage of a recovery operation underway on the grounds of 2 hospitals in Gaza. Mass graves have been discovered containing hundreds of bodies. The discovery comes after the Israeli military carried out raids on the facilities earlier this year. You can hear more on that story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 7. Well, once again, thousands of Winnipeggers flooded downtown for a whiteout street party.
Go Jets, go! Go Jets, go! Go Jets, go!
Bo Downey was in the crowd outside Canada Life Centre last night. He thinks these whiteouts are a rite of spring for many.
Other than concerts, it's the one chance that adults have to go wild, right? To yell at the top of their lungs about people wondering what's wrong with that guy. So it's just it's a chance for people to let loose. It's like the light switch for Winnipeg to turn on after winter is the whiteout. Yeah.
Jets fan Tai Olotu was in the crowd as well on Donald Street. He says more ticketed events outdoors could help bring more people downtown.
I feel like if there was things happening like this, like organized events and just like people, interacting with other people within the community, I feel like that's a 10 out of 10.
Winnipeg Jets fans will have a week to rest up and get ready for the next whiteout. And last night, the Jets had the lead in the second period. Mark Scheifele on ESPN in front of a sold-out crowd, giving Winnipeg that 2-1 lead, but then the Jets are covered by an avalanche. Colorado takes the game 5-2. The series now is tied at 1 game apiece. Jets' Kyle Connor says this loss hurts.
It stings. No, you never like losing a little home game here. I'm sure they're happy with the split. At the same time, we got to respond. So it's we got to dictate that play going into their barn, and it's about everyone in here about trying to respond.
Winnipeg gets a couple of days to regroup. Game 3 in this playoff series now moves to Colorado, and it is a late start. You thought last night was late. Game 3, the puck drops at 9 o'clock Central Time on Friday night. You can find all the details from last night's game as well as other news. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
9 o'clock.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a late one. Can you do it?
Well, it's Friday night, so
we're going to a friend's place for the Friday night game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if it goes to overtime, do I bring a sleeping bag just in case? Is it just a sleepover?
Do they know what you do for a living?
I know, right?
Yes, you should bring a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
I don't know, Heather. Are you going to try to do it? It's Friday night.
Absolutely. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do it too. I almost did it last night. I got into the third period and then I just couldn't. I was like, Sorry.
Oh, no.
I woke up hopeful, though. I always woke up and then I Google. I'm like, did they win? And then no. I want to ask a question here. This comes right out of the news, and then we'll get into our regional forecast and hear more from Corey about traffic. But I want to know whether or not we should return to the downtown street party. So should downtown street parties make a comeback in Winnipeg? Why? Or why not? 788-3205. We'll take calls. I've posted this on my CBC, on my Marcy Marcusa page, which acts as a show page during the show on Facebook. I posted there. So should they make a comeback in Winnipeg? Why? Or why not? Now, this is coming out of the news, of course, hearing thousands of people downtown. And then also Heather had a clip of someone earlier in the newscast saying, this is great. It puts the energy into the downtown. It's nice to see everybody downtown. And it actually came right out of a clip where somebody downtown last night said that. We should do this more often. Now, we used to have regular street parties. It was an initiative of former Mayor Glenn Murray. He put the kibosh on those street parties in 2004. It was always controversial. At that time, Portage and Main would close for a weekend, which cost taxpayers about $300,000 at the time. It saw, though, 50,000 Winnipeggers come downtown to see various things. The last one I remember, which I think was the last one, huge stage, Portage and Main, Great Big Sea and other bands, and people would just fill the intersection, and then the crowd would spill up Portage and spill on either sides of Main as well. So yeah, it brought a ton of energy, but there was a cost. So what do you think? Should downtown street parties, regular ones, make a comeback? 788-3205. Right now, spring and the sunshine is certainly going to make a comeback today. Abby's in with our regional forecast.
Thank you very much, Marcy. Good morning. I just peeked behind the blinds and I see it's trying to creep up behind the buildings outside on Portage there. Currently we are at 0. It's clear outside. Today's forecast is looking bright with sunny conditions ahead and some winds to contend with. Expect a high of 17 degrees today. And as we head to Brandon, it's at -4 over there. Mainly clear skies also. That's the situation of what the day looks like over there. The forecast calls for a sunny day with a high of 19. Now in Thompson is at -5 with mostly cloudy skies. Today will bring a mix of sun and clouds, and then you see the temperature climb to 9 degrees. Further north in Churchill, it's currently -10 with mostly cloudy conditions. Expect that cloudy skies to stick around, and then you'd get to a high of -4. Down in Dauphin, it's 3 degrees over there. Clear skies you're seeing. Today will be mainly sunny, and you will get to a high of 19. Good morning to our friends in Gimli. It is currently -5 with mainly clear skies. The Interlake region will be enjoying mainly sunny conditions today, and the temperature will climb to a high of 14. Steinbach is currently at -6 with mainly clear conditions also. Today we'll see sunny skies, and then we'll get to a high of 18. And finally in Morris, it is currently -4 degrees with partly cloudy skies. The Pembina Valley region will experience mainly sunny weather with a high of 19. For Winnipeg today, we're expecting sunshine, a high of 17, and the wind will peak up around noon, tapering off around 7 p.m., tapering off tonight, and then we'll dip down to 7. Tomorrow looks even warmer and windier. We'll see a high of 22.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
And you already heard Corey Funk in his sleeping bag plans for Friday night, but what about traffic?
Yeah, overall, it's very straightforward commute this morning. Haven't heard anything on the commuter line. But if you're out there, you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call. Let folks know what you're seeing. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Do you know what I actually like to do when I stay up? Clean.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I hate cleaning. I actually don't. I really, honestly, I do, full disclosure. But for some reason on the weekend, if I find myself staying up and I'm the only one up in the house, I'm like, oh, I'm going to tidy up the whole house. Then you get up, the house is clean.
And your husband's like, turn off the vacuum. It's 11 p.m.
Oh, there's no vacuuming. That's deep cleaning.
Oh, I see. Just tidying. Well,
there's some wiping. There's some wiping. Moving on to business news. Chris Lee Ramachan's here via Zoom. Hi there.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with talking about electric vehicles. There's a new outlook for electric vehicles. It's been released. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, the International Energy Agency says the electric car revolution is on track. It says global EV sales are set to rise by more than a fifth to reach 17 million this year, powered by drivers in China. And the new report projects surging demand over the next decade that will, it says, remake the global auto industry and significantly reduce oil consumption. And it expects half of all cars sold globally to be electric by 2035. That's, of course, if charging infrastructure keeps pace. Now, this comes, though, just days after the world's largest EV maker, Tesla, says it slashed its prices to counter declining sales and growing competition. Fatih Birol is the executive director of the IEA. He actually says there has been a 25% increase in sales in the first quarter compared to last year.
Throughout this year, we expect more than 1/4 of the cars sold in the world will be an electric car. In China, we think this year almost every second car sold will be an electric car. In Europe, more than 1/4 of the cars sold will be an electric car, and in the United States, about 1 out of 9 cars sold will be an electric car.
And the number of new battery EVs sold in the European Union rose almost 4% in the first quarter compared with last year. Now, despite these upbeat trends, EV makers say they are grappling with slim profit margins squeezed by price wars as competition heats up.
Let's talk summer tourism and the season, which is about to ramp up for sure. We've got great weather in Manitoba so far. How are operators across the country feeling about the season?
Well, even as business roars back, recovery from COVID-19 is taking longer than some expected. So many couldn't operate at all through the government shutdowns, of course. And while 2022 was good as Canadians looking to expend some pent-up energy and pent-up money surged back to domestic travel, last year saw a hiccup amid rising interest rates. So even though the tourism industry in terms of interest and booking is recovering, businesses are still hurting. And that's because operators say the sector has yet to reach pre-COVID levels, and debt remains a hefty burden for thousands of small businesses across the country. Destination Canada says international visitor numbers remained down from 4 years earlier, with tourists from the U.S. at 85% of 2019 levels and those from further at 78%. The Tourism Industry Association of Canada says the industry brought in more than $109 billion in revenue last year, about 4% more than in 2019, but it says that's actually significantly less in real terms after accounting for inflation. And so the association has called on the federal government to create a new low-interest loan program and a temporary foreign worker stream, both specific for the tourism industry.
Finally, before we look at the numbers this morning, a major deal could join 2 major fashion companies, but it could be blocked. We've been hearing a bit about it. What are the details now?
Yeah, that's right. So the U.S. Federal Trade Commission has sued to block the $8.5 billion acquisition of Capri Holdings by Tapestry, which is the parent company of Coach and Kate Spade. So the move by regulators brings a temporary halt to this deal that would marry these 2 major names in luxury retailer and put 6 fashion brands under a single company. So that's Tapestry's Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman, and Capri's Versace, Jimmy Choo, and Michael Kors. So with this transaction, the brands could be poised to better compete with European luxury names such as Burberry and LVMH's Louis Vuitton. But the FTC says the combined company would actually harm employees and shoppers and deprive them of competition. Now, the companies say the agency misunderstands the marketplace and the way people shop. They say they face pressure from both lower and higher priced products, and that they still need to win consumers who increasingly shop across brands, channels, and price points. So both plan to fight for the transaction in court.
And finally, what's up with the numbers in the markets then today?
In Europe, markets are higher as positive momentum builds. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are rising. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is down 64 cents to 82.75 US per barrel. Gold is down $14.80 to $2,327.70 US per ounce. And the dollar is down just over a tenth of a cent to 73.07 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee Ramlicam, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That is Business News with Crystal Lee. Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to be talking about birthdays and your mental health and how you feel on your birthday, and also the history of that and how it goes back to maybe how you felt as a kid. That's our mental health column. Stay tuned. Interesting conversation coming up. Right now, though, husband and wife duo Burnstick, who've been in our program many times before, have observed that we are constantly in some kind of battle. It can be with other people. It can be against circumstances outside of our control as well. Their latest song tries to claim some of that control back. This one's called Hands Tied.
There's a war that rises with the morning light, and a weathered man that's keeping time. We hit the ground running to the daily grind. Gone is grace and peace of mind. Who am I? We wipe our brow under the midday sun. Can the mistakes we've made even be undone? Our hands are tied and our feet outrun. Bite the bullet as you point the gun. Who am I? Oh, it was so simple when it was just us. Roads got crossed on the downhill. Time betrayed our trust. As the witching hour is creeping in, and our burning flesh shows we're made of sin. It's hard to know which side to bear. Cut each other down as we gasp for air. Who am I? Oh, it was so simple when it was just us. Roads got crossed on the downhill. Time betrayed our trust. Oh, it was so simple when it was just us. Roads got crossed on the downhill. Time betrayed our trust.
Winnipeg's Burnstick and Hands Tied. Their new album, Made of Sin, is out on May 24th. It's 11 minutes to 7 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show, mainly Clear this Wednesday morning and Zero. And next we have All Got One, a birthday, but we don't all feel the same about them. Today on our mental health column, we'll look at how birthdays connect with our sense of self and some of the psychology around them. Mark Hennick is here.
Hi.
So what kind of impact do birthdays have on our sense of self and our mental health?
Well, I was thinking about birthdays this week, and it really caused me to reflect on child development and human development because I did my graduate studies in that area. And I did that because I'm just fascinated by how we navigate through the different stages and phases of our life. And in most cultures, that unfolding of sorts, it's punctuated every year by a couple of recurring events. And they're events that together give our life narrative a certain structure and an orderliness. And we even learn to anticipate them because they're often very deeply related to our cultural traditions and even our religious rituals. It helps us to develop a personal story, and that's what shapes our personality. And we see the world through our personality. So that's why it's so important. And, among the most significant of these plot points in our life that come around every year, they're birthdays. And birthdays, as a result, can have an important impact on our mental health and well-being. But that impact, it very much seems to depend on your present stage of life and how you navigated the ones that came before it. So, there are some parts of our experience where we over-identify with things that we've been through. And then there's other parts that we under-identify. So how we relate to our past, how we relate to our experiences, that really seems to mediate how our birthday impacts our mental health.
Of course, our experiences accumulate over time. So how do they then, the experiences of birthdays change throughout our lives?
Yeah, I like to think of our life in sort of portions of thirds. And for most of that first third of your life, your childhood and adolescence, even into your early adulthood, actually, birthdays are a big deal. They're generally positive. And if you think back to some of your earliest memories, there's a pretty good chance that at least one of them will be of a birthday. I remember mine. I was turning 4 years old. My mother dressed me up in a little red vest and a black bow tie. We had chocolate cake with unmatched blue icing on it. And I remember that, I think, so vividly now, at least in part, because it was documented in our family photo albums, and we would often go through them. So birthdays, both how we celebrate them, but also then how we revisit them later with kids, that's what builds a lifelong positive memory bias and contributes to that life narrative. And we know from memory research that accessing memories later and then reconsolidating them, that's what helps us to make sense of ourselves and what happened to us and our place in the world. So childhood birthdays really aren't all that frivolous. Kids need to be made to feel special from time to time. All of us do. And, when I mentioned that I studied child development, I did so at the Erickson Institute in Chicago. And Erik Erikson was a developmental psychologist who wrote a lot about the psychosocial stages that we go through in our development. And one of them, according to him, one of the existential questions that we ask ourselves as a child is it okay to be me? And birthdays, birthday parties especially, can be great annual reminders to kids and to ourselves that yes, it is okay to be you, and you know what? We're glad you're here.
What about the actual celebrations, like making an event of the occasion? What would you say about the role of birthday parties?
Well, parties are usually positive, pro-social experiences for kids when they get to be the center of attention. They don't have to be big, expensive, stressful things to be meaningful for kids either. Kids really crave experiences over things. It very much is more about the party than it is about the present. They probably won't even remember the presents later on. So even just getting some family together, having something simple, just enough for the kids to differentiate that day from the everyday routine of childhood. And then after just a few of those exposures, kids become conditioned pretty early on to look forward to their birthday. And that's an important factor. Anticipation of future positive events, that actually confers powerful protective benefits to our mental health and well-being. Anticipation is really what teaches kids to look forward to things, to hang in there when stuff is tough. Anticipation teaches kids how to hope for more or for something different. But, childhood experiences of birthdays, too, they also include other people's birthdays, not just their own. They include siblings and parents, grandparents, friends. If you've had younger kids, you've probably thrown a few birthday parties for cats and dogs and stuffed animals and everything else. And I think it's through those experiences the kids get to learn how to focus on other people. They learn how to celebrate other people, how to look forward to something for somebody else. That's the foundation of empathy. It's arguably the foundation of love. which is to will the best for somebody else.
So if you're lucky, that's how it starts. How does our relationship with our birthday change as we get older?
Yeah, as we get older, most of us have probably felt that shift at some point from that childlike anticipation of birthdays to something else. For me, it happened when I wasn't 29 anymore, when I left my 20s and entered my 30s into that second third of life. At some point you realize, hopefully, that you're not a kid anymore, that you have responsibilities, you have ambitions. You start comparing yourself against your peers, and you compare yourself against your own expectations of what you thought you were supposed to be by now. One of Erik Erikson's existential questions at this phase of life, in the second third, is, can I make my life count? I think some people take that transition kind of hard. And as a result, there's this well-documented phenomena in the literature called birthday blues, when some people feel worse on their birthday than they do on just other routine days of adulthood. And I think that partly comes from that over-identification that I mentioned, from this clinging too tightly to your past narratives. I think in order to get beyond that, I think of what the psychotherapist Lori Gottlieb often says, which is, at some point in our lives, we have to let go of the fantasy of creating a better past. I think that's the key to healthy psychological aging. It's this realization that aging is a constant, recurring process of dying and of rebirth. We live so many lives in this lifetime. And human development throughout the lifespan is a story of letting go with one hand and reaching out with the other. I think that's how we move forward, even as we approach our later years, until we eventually do reach that final third of our lives, and we're faced with with Erikson's last existential question, which is it okay to have been me? And I really hope that as people get older and their birthdays roll around again and again, they remember that, yes, it was okay to be you. And we're still glad you're here. And as long as you are, there's too little time left not to have a happy birthday.
And so now what are you grateful for this week? And I will give the spoiler alert on this special day, Mark.
So I'm grateful that today's my birthday. And I didn't lead with that because it's not exactly national breaking news. But, I'm grateful every day, as the old saying goes, to have survived 100% of my worst days. I'm grateful to have made it another year. I'm grateful, as far as I know, to have more ahead of me.
Happy birthday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark Hennick, the author of So-Called Normal and also our mental health columnist. It's a big topic, hey? How do you feel about birthdays? Complicated. 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Walls is in to make the news uncomplicated. She's here with headlines. Hi.
Hi there. Well, Manitoba Public Insurance has axed 32 people from its management team. The cuts come on the heels of an external review. It found too many managerial layers, led to confusion and instability at MPI. And a new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called the Out of Custody Youth Intake Court, and the goal is to get young people in front of a judge fast so they can get the help they need sooner. We'll hear more about it in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Traffic moving fine so far this morning. Streets are dry and clear. 788-3093 if where you live in Manitoba they're not, and you have an update. Clear downtown in terms of the sky. 0, calm, and a high of 17 in the sun with lighter winds than yesterday is what we're expecting. Also, in the next hour of the program, we're going to build on some conversations we've been having about housing. 1 year, 1,000 units. That's a success already in British Columbia for their rental protection fund. Now, they set it up ahead of a similar fund that was announced in our provincial budget. And then there were initiatives federally as well. So we're going to go to BC to find out what lessons we can learn about what's worked for nonprofits who are accessing that fund, and also lessons that they've learned there. In addition, in the next hour of the show, the woman behind a local charity granting wishes to kids with terminal illnesses has died. We're going to hear about her final wish and the legacy she leaves behind. Stay tuned for that. And we'll build on the story that Heather just mentioned about that new kind of court in Winnipeg. Caitlin Garlick has a special report for us. She's going to be in with full details just before 7 o'clock, or we'll hear from her rather. I'm Marcy Marcusa. World Report is coming up next on CBC 89.3 FM.
Today on The Current.
But there's also geopolitical concerns that come on the regulatory side that we really need to be paying attention to.
The history of artificial intelligence has deep roots in Canada, but technology writer David Scott worries that as AI grows, Canada risks being left behind. David Scott on how to get the future of Canadian tech back on track, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Canadian banks are being urged to make their platforms safer for survivors of intimate partner violence. Several women have come forward to CBC News. They have detailed how e-transfers are being used to send them abusive messages. Katie Nicholson has the details.
Did I show you the message he sent me on TikTok?
When Emma Parsons broke up with her ex, he flooded her with unwanted messages.
Well, they were very abusive messages. They were mean.
She blocked him on every platform. Then the e-transfer started with those same messages attached.
Well, so the first one was $1.
It's a problem Australian banks decided to tackle head on.
I read one that was a series of 900 messages, 1 cent at a time, saying things like, I want to kill you.
Former banking executive Catherine Fitzpatrick spearheaded many of the changes the industry made, including in-app reporting of abuse. They even created an AI program which blocks abusive language and made it free to all banks worldwide. She shared their solutions with the International Banking Federation, which includes Canadian banks, 2 years ago.
No one deserves to have this abuse. So I would really encourage every bank in Canada to look at the way the Australian banks, some of the UK and the New Zealand banks are starting to move on this problem.
Scotiabank, RBC, TD, CIBC and BMO did not answer CBC News' questions about what steps they were taking to address the issue. They deferred to the Canadian Bankers Association. In an email, it said its members have policies and procedures in place to protect customers from harassment and encourages people to report abuse to the bank and the police. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
There are growing calls for an international independent investigation into what happened at 2 hospitals in Gaza. They were both raided by the Israeli military, and now hundreds of bodies are being discovered on hospital grounds. CBC News has obtained video from the recovery operation at one of these sites. Abby Kodassan has the details.
A forklift slowly rolls along in the courtyard of Nasser Hospital in Han Yunis as civil defense workers search for bodies. They're not the only ones. Nazmia Abu Asar says she can't find her husband 4 days into her search. Some Palestinians told CNN they had temporarily buried relatives who'd been killed at the medical complex, only to return and find the bodies had been dug up, nowhere to be found. The Israeli military laid siege to Nasser Hospital back in January before storming it. The IDF withdrew a few weeks ago. It denies burying Palestinians in mass graves, acknowledging, though, some bodies had been exhumed in their search for hostages, but it says they were respectfully returned to their original place. Gaza civil defense workers say more than 300 bodies have been uncovered around the hospital. Sameh Hamed is helping to identify the remains. The Criminal Evidence Administrator says they look at clothing or marks on the bodies. He also says they are seeing clear signs of assault to the bodies, including missing limbs. In Gaza City, similar accusations and images of bodies at Al-Shifa Hospital, which had also been raided by the IDF. CBC News cannot independently verify these accounts as foreign journalists are barred from entering Gaza. The United Nations has now called for an independent and transparent probe with international investigators. Abby Kodassan, CBC News, London.
People going to this year's Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden will see heightened security. Protests are being held in the city of Malmö over Israel's participation in the annual event. Malmö has a large Muslim population. Many are calling on organizers to ban Israel from the contest over the war in Gaza. Per Erik Ebstall is the director of sustainability and safety for the city.
There's a high threat level combined with a lot of people.
We had a big conference 2 years ago concerning anti-Semitism, but there were not that many visitors at that venue. This time we have more high security levels and many visitors, and that's a challenge.
More than 100,000 people from 84 countries are expected to pack into the city of Malmö for Eurovision. The European Broadcasting Union has refused calls to ban Israel. Israeli contestants were forced to modify their song submissions. Organizers said they were political. The Eurovision contest begins May 7th. To the U.S.
On this vote, the yeas are 79, the nays are 18. The motion to concur in the House amendment is agreed to.
The Senate last night passed a $95 billion military aid package. Money is earmarked for wartime assistance in Israel, for humanitarian relief, for citizens of Gaza, and for Ukraine and Taiwan. The vote was passed after months of delays and debates. Democrat Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called it a win for bipartisanship.
If you don't let the hard right pull you over, and they're not interested in getting anything done, they're just interested in negativity and destruction, you can get things done. And I hope our Republican colleagues have learned that lesson, not to listen to the hard right, but to try and work and get things done.
President Joe Biden is expected to sign the bill into law later today. Biden is also expected to sign a bill that could ban TikTok. The bill offers the app's Chinese parent company two choices: sell or be shut down in the U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments today in a case involving the state of Idaho and abortions. Idaho is one of several states that bans the procedure, with some exceptions, but a federal law requires hospitals to deliver emergency care that includes abortions. Whatever the court decides will ripple across the United States. Freelance reporter Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
Protests against abortion bans have become commonplace in America ever since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade nearly 2 years ago. That very court is now set to decide on a case that could limit abortion care during medical emergencies. At issue in Moyle v. United States is whether a federal law requiring hospitals to provide stabilizing treatment, including abortions in emergency situations, preempts Idaho law, which only allows abortions to save the life of the mother. Joseph Koza is an assistant teaching professor at Rice University.
The federal statute covers more than just death, so it's a big question around when can doctors intervene? Do they have to wait till the patient is on the brink of death, or can they intervene sooner?
Doctors in Idaho face up to 5 years in prison if convicted of performing an illegal abortion. The court's ruling is expected at the end of June, and the ramifications could be widespread. 14 states now ban the procedure, including Texas, where a court earlier this year ruled doctors don't need to perform emergency abortions. And there have been reports of pregnant women being turned away from emergency rooms. If the court rules in Idaho's favor, abortion access could become even more restricted, even in the most restrictive states. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
Tesla's revenues have taken a big dive. The electric car giant released its quarterly results yesterday. Its earnings are down more than half over last year. Senior business reporter Anis Hadari tells us the company is trying to turn its fortunes around.
There's been a lot of talk about our upcoming vehicle line.
Elon Musk is telling Tesla investors expect new, more affordable models by 2025, maybe even this year.
So it's not contingent on any new factory or massive new production line. It'll be made on our current production lines much more efficiently.
Announcements like that are part of why Tesla stock shot up on Tuesday night after the closing bell rang. Because certainly Tesla's actual results in the first quarter weren't anything to celebrate. Net income down 55% compared to last year.
Tesla is finally acting like a car company.
Auto industry analyst Sam Purani says even though Tesla lost more money than experts predicted, the stock price might be going up because the company now says new models are coming sooner.
Their Model S is well over 12 years old now. Tesla needs to have these changes.
Musk also talked up self-driving robocars that you can hire, kind of like hailing an Uber. But Purani says realistically, that's years away.
There's a lot of stuff that Elon Musk has said that the company is focusing on in this period where there's not a lot to crow about on the automotive side.
That automotive side includes less demand for Tesla's electric vehicles, which may be why the company said yesterday it's cutting more than 6,000 jobs. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. Nice clear sky out there in Winnipeg. Chilly start, but we're going to have a really nice day today. Thanks for joining us here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. This hour on the show, the woman behind a local charity granting wishes to kids with terminal illnesses has passed away. We're going to hear about her final wish and the legacy she leaves behind in our community. Also, a new kind of court in Winnipeg is trying to do a better job of dealing with the youngest of offenders. At 10 to 8, we're going to hear more about how they're trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them in. And BC, British Columbia, had an active rental protection fund and has had it in place for a year. What can Manitoba learn about best practices now that a similar fund was promised in the latest provincial budget? We'll find out. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for other local headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Public Insurance has made cuts to its management team following an external review. That review found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at the public insurer. Now, 32 positions, or about 1/5 of MPI's management team, have been axed. Thousands of Winnipeg Jets fans flooded downtown Winnipeg last night for a second whiteout street party, and is leading some to wonder why the city doesn't stage more events downtown. Jets fan Carson Lowe says more people should come downtown on nights when there aren't Jets games. He says people worry about safety, but it's just a matter of getting out of your comfort zone. We'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
Heather, I got a couple of comments to share with you from listeners that came out of that very thing in your news this morning.
Okay.
I was asking on Facebook, and I'll take calls on this too, should regular downtown street parties make a comeback? Tanda Siwak saying yes, we need free and fun things to do as a community. Jacqueline Castle Kramer saying no, I have friends who live in quote-unquote popular areas for these events, primarily for their proximity to transit routes, and having a party on or near your street is disruptive, in some cases dangerous. There's literally nowhere you can go to get away from the noise. It can last most of the night. So a yes and a no. And then Vic Pereira right up the middle with qualifications saying yes, but not the way downtown's set up. So Vic's idea is to turn Graham Avenue into a true bus pedestrian corridor between Main and Vaughan, and that would make it easier and then less disruptive. But the current situation requires too many reroutes and closures, as you were outlining yesterday in the news. Remember all the streets all closed? So, big talker. Do you remember the ones we used to have down here when Glenn Murray was mayor?
Oh, yeah. Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. So at that time, they were called the Get Together Downtown Festivals.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they used to shut Portage and Main. They'd set up stages, and people would spill all over the streets for these parties. They were canceled due to cost, huge cost. At the time, CBC reporting $300,000, and that was 2003 to put these on. But that was closing Portage and Main for a weekend. So it wasn't a one-night thing. So there'll be differences in the money here, but yeah, they brought about 50,000 people into the downtown.
And the more you come downtown, the more you see all the potential here. There's so much to do.
Yep. I guess it's an interesting question, especially at this moment, right? When we know that downtown workers haven't returned to the same numbers. We know we need a vision for our downtown in a new way. We have a lot of things that are happening around that are coming. So do we get the people down to see all of it? So a street party is the way to go. Weigh in this morning. It's a really good conversation. Love to hear your perspective. 788-3205. Wonderful to hear calls on this, but you can write on Facebook if that's easier. Maybe you're sitting on the bus and that's an easier move to make for us to connect. All right, let's get into what's going on in weather and traffic, starting with the forecast and Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. Today's outlook, nothing short of delightful. That's what I would say. We're in for sunny skies with the wind gradually shifting to the south, and it might be picking up a bit by noon, and we are expecting the mercury to rise to a comfortable 17 degrees later. Tonight, we're going to be seeing a few clouds that may drift in, but nothing to worry about. The wind will be calm, and then it's going to shift back to the south. Churchill is currently at -10 and cloudy. Thompson, Brandon, Gimli all at -4, mainly clear. Dauphin is clear at 1. Steinbach at Morris both at -3, mainly clear. The forecast for Winnipeg today, we're warming up and we're getting to a high of 17 currently. We are at 1 degree.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey, what do you know?
Yeah, got a call from Jill, and she was driving to through the exchange to get to HSC. She said Bannatyne is actually closed just after Main between King and Princess. So that kind of caught her a bit off guard. I looked it up. That's going to be work is going to be happening there until April 30th is what the city expects to be done that by. Thanks for that call, Jill. Also a reminder that tomorrow, actually, if you are driving through the exchange, southbound Princess Avenue from Bannatyne to McDermott also closed just for the day, though, for construction. So heads up that southbound Princess tomorrow between Bannatyne and McDermott got to be closed just for tomorrow. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Be like Jill, 204-788-3093.
Time right now is 7:15 a.m. on your Wednesday morning. And up first, as you know, the federal government came up with its budget last week, and there was a huge focus on affordable housing. And before that, Manitoba's provincial budget came out, and there was a huge focus on affordable housing. But will the financial promises being made make a real difference? Now, one of the federal promises is the new $1.5 billion Canada Rental Protection Fund to help community housing providers secure affordable renting units. And then provincial in Manitoba, they've announced a $6 million acquisition fund, they're calling it. British Columbia has a fund similar to Manitoba's. It's $500 million, though, and it's already been operating for a year. So on the West Coast, they have called it the same thing that the feds have called theirs, the Rental Protection Fund. But this is a provincial fund there. To find out how effective it's been in this first year of operation, I spoke recently with Katie Myslechko via Zoom. She's the CEO of the fund.
Good morning. Great to be here.
So how does the fund actually work, Katie?
Sure. So the Rental Protection Fund here in BC is structured so that we can help to fill the equity gap that exists when nonprofits, co-ops, community housing providers are purchasing existing rental buildings. And so when anyone is purchasing an existing rental building, that equity gap exists. And it can be filled through one of two ways. It can be filled through access to a program like ours, or it then typically having to be filled by raising those rents upon acquisition. And so by being able to fill that equity gap, we're then able to not only move those units into the community housing sector, keep them affordable there, but maintain them that way because that pressure is alleviated from challenging the rents.
And if the pressure weren't alleviated, I guess at the front end through this fund, then nonprofits, if they can find a space first, but then to be able to do the actual acquisition, or would it be the upkeep and upgrades on the buildings that would make the rents need to go up?
It's both. And that's why any acquisition program needs to have both hand in hand, because of course, these are older buildings, they're 20, 30, 40 years old, and often in need of repair, especially these days. We're losing a lot of these units just as much to disinvestment as we are to, threat of redevelopment, because interest rates and inflation being what it is, even the most well-meaning landlords are stretched pretty thin. And so it's important that there is a component available to fill that equity gap, but also to provide what we refer to as renewal. And we provide renewal grants alongside of our contributions to ensure that they're able to do the necessary renovations to those buildings, extend their useful life, and make them more sustainable to maintain for decades to come.
Now, in the news this week in Manitoba and in Winnipeg, the mayor was looking at different models, housing first and such, and how to move forward. But some of the organizations were saying, there's not enough housing stock to make a dent in our homelessness problem here. So obviously, a program that we're talking about here, this is hopefully going to fill some of those gaps. How much of a gap has it filled in a year in BC since it's been up and running, the fund?
Here in BC, I'm not sure exactly what the metric is in Manitoba, but in BC, we were losing 5 units for every new unit we built. And so until you start to kind of plug the hole in the bottom of the bucket, so to speak, you are never really making net positive progress, no matter how successful your supply side solutions are. And so that's what a fund like this is really able to do. And for us, within a year, we have already approved funding for almost 1,000 units. Many of those have closed and already made their way into the community housing sector. And then we have been just blown away with the demand. We have over 100 applications from nonprofits, either pre-qualified or underway, and over 2,000 units in our pipeline that are either conducting their due diligence, on their way to coming in front of our investment committee, or hopefully securing funding.
Securing funding. So for nonprofits that are interested in this conversation, what have you learned in this year about making sure that this is accessible and what help they might need to sort of make it happen if they're interested?
It's such a great question. And I think, two things pop to mind. One is it's important that the process, as it's established, kind of moves logically with the expectations of the market. And we are in a slow market, but there's still timelines that are a lot different than they would be for new development, and ensuring that the flow of funds and the kind of approval process is realistic to move within that. Otherwise, vendors may not be able to kind of be endlessly patient waiting for that funding to come through or the approvals to come through, and those units end up being lost. I would say the other thing too is ensuring that the funding itself, but also the financing itself, is available as universally as possible. That's one of the things we're really excited about with the federal budget announcement. Hopefully those funds start flowing soon enough, but that there could be a single stream of financing available to all nonprofits, no matter where they're located across the country, urban, rural, up north. It shouldn't matter if there's a single stream of funding. But of course, that can be a challenge without that. So.
Right now, then, are you operating on multiple streams of funding?
Right now, what's important to us to keep it as streamlined as possible, our applicants do go and secure their own mortgages. And then we work closely with them and their lenders and CMHC to streamline as much as we can within our control.
1,000 units. So, obviously, Vancouver and BC is vastly different from where we are in Manitoba, but houses or apartment blocks, or what's the nature of the spaces that have been approved for funding?
Typically not as much houses, but that is a part of our criteria. Our buildings need to be at least 4 to 5 units minimum. But we have seen everything from townhomes all the way to concrete towers and all the wood frame walk-ups in between. So our $500 million investment from the province of BC has a contribution agreement associated with it, and a set of criteria that pairs along with that, and those are some of them.
$500 million. There's some criticism here that the money that's been set aside by our provinces is nowhere near enough. Now, we're different markets, different issues, different building costs. We know how expensive BC is, but ours is set at $6 million in acquisition fund. So far away from $500 million.
Yeah, every bit makes a difference, and it also often feels like it's never quite enough. I do think that the more we get to learn about what the loans coming from the federal government look like, that will make a really big difference in how far any province's dollar will go in terms of acquiring units. Definitely markets are different, even city to city, let alone province to province. But the lower cost that debt can be, the further it'll stretch those dollars. So They haven't really shared a whole lot about that yet with last week's budget, but we are optimistic and certainly advocating for that as well.
And just last, any final words of advice?
I think I would say I'd encourage any provinces stepping up with funding like this, or certainly the feds, to work in partnership with your community housing sector on this. Ultimately, they're the ones acquiring these units. If there's an ability to kind of bring their leadership or member associations along in delivering this, for us, that was a transformational piece of this. And there is no way we would be almost 1,000 units secured and preserved if they had taken any other approach.
Thank you very much for all of you, how generous you've been with your time. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for all the questions.
That was Katie Myslechko, and part of a recent conversation I had with her. She's the CEO of the BC Rental Protection Fund. Now, here in Manitoba, the Right to Housing Coalition shared with CBC to meet the demand for affordable housing in our province. Just let's have some numbers here. We would need 1,000 more units every year for the next 10 years. And if you want to go online, a CBC Manitoba special report on housing done last September found that over 2,000 Manitoba housing units at that time were sitting vacant, with 75% of those vacancies due to needing proper repair or renovation. So we'll see what comes next. 7:25 a.m. the time. It's mainly sunny, 1 degree in Winnipeg, and the high today is 17. It's time for morning sports. Scott Regier joins us now. Good morning.
Hey there, Marcy.
Well, you can't win them all. The Jets had their chances last night, but still find themselves tied now with Colorado in their playoff series. And what a big test they have ahead of them when they, on Friday.
Yeah, and we'll get to that, their recent history playing in Denver. But as for last night's game, I mean, it started off well enough, right? David Gustafsson scoring early on, the whiteout giving Alexander Georgiev, the beleaguered, up until last night, goalie for Colorado, all he could handle in terms of chanting, trying to get under his skin. But Georgiev, to his credit, ended up playing very, very well, making 30 saves, frankly outdueling Connor Hellebuck last night, what ended a 5-2 victory for Colorado that ties up this series. The irony is, and we're going to hear from Rick Bowness in a second here, defensively anyway, the Jets were stronger than they were in their opening win.
For the most part, we did a good job on those guys. Look who scored their goals. Parise, I mean, those guys got in there and got some greasy goals. So for the like Adams Lyons doing a great job against those guys for the most part. They're elite players. They're gonna control the puck. They're gonna make their plays. But I thought we minimized them for the most part tonight, much better than we did last game.
Yeah, the coach mentioning how well, especially Adam Lowry, has done in shutting down Nathan McKinnon, one of the superstars of the game. But then you have a guy like Zach Parise who scored a goal. He's 40 years old. He came out of semi-retirement. These are the types of stories that sometimes show up in the playoffs. And so here are the Jets heading to Denver, tied at 1. And the Avalanche, remember, had the best home record in the NHL, although both games they played against the Jets at home, they lost, including a certain 7-0 debacle not so long ago. So let's hope they can get on the right side of things coming up a couple nights from now.
Oh, if you're going to the game, Winnipeggers, Manitobans, let me know. Love to hear from you.
Yeah.
You're going to need to scream really loud on Friday night.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking hockey. What are the chances Canadian hockey fans are back smiling after tonight's action, do you think?
Well, I mean, the Oilers looked fantastic in their first game against the LA Kings, winning 7-4. It really wasn't even that close. So if we see more of the same from the Oilers, who got 5 assists alone from Connor McDavid, there's a reason they're among the Canadian teams, the Cup favorites this time around. If they do the same as they did in their opener, they'll be fine tonight. As for Toronto, it was the Austin Matthews line that willed them to victory the last time out in Boston against the Bruins. But they're going to need more than that against a deep Bruins outfit. And William Nylander returning would be a huge step forward in that regard. He's had an injury that's kept him out the first 2 games. Toronto very non-committal. I know it's the playoffs. You don't give anything away to your opponents. About Nylander possibly being healthy for tonight. He's questionable. So will Canadian hockey fans be smiling? In the western part of the country, I suspect yes.
To the NBA now. A former Raptor seems to be enjoying himself, huh?
Yeah, Spicy P is now a spicy pacer, of course, but his smile no less infectious, Marcy. Pascal Siakam with 37 points in Indiana's win over Milwaukee last night, tying up that opening round series at a game apiece.
You know, I'm blessed, man. Blessed to be here. Didn't go to the playoff last year, so that was my goal coming in this year. I feel good, man. Win the playoffs. I'm back where I belong, so I just want to continue to compete.
He's my favorite athlete. His joy is just so infectious. Siakam and the Pacers, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Oklahoma City, as well as Jamal Murray and the defending champion Nuggets. The Raptors aren't in the postseason, of course, but there are plenty of Canadian storylines. Meanwhile, Marcy, interesting looking at a poll of NBA players conducted by the New York Times. It was anonymous, and among other questions, players were asked who their favorite athlete is outside the NBA. NFL star Lamar Jackson was picked by most, but in second place, ahead of Novak Djokovic, Patrick Mahomes, and Usain Bolt. NBA's second favorite athlete, Caitlin Clark, which is pretty cool. Also cool, Nike is signing Clark to the richest deal ever for a female basketballer. The numbers are big, not that big though. $28 million. Which is very good because she's only making $76,000 in her WNBA salary.
All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
Manitoban's closed after Maine between King and Princess. Quick traffic note here. And I want to mention what's coming up after the news. So the woman behind a local charity, the Dream Factory, it grants wishes to kids with terminal illness, has herself passed away. We're going to hear about her legacy after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is clear. It's 1 degree right now. We are headed to a gorgeous afternoon. Sunshine and 17 today. A new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called the Out of Custody Youth Intake Court. The goal is to get young people in front of a judge fast so they can get the help they need sooner. Leanne Martin is an associate chief judge of Manitoba's provincial court. She helped create this new youth court after seeing so many young people struggling with mental illness, addictions, and trauma.
If people saw or heard what was going on in their lives and what they were doing, I think might add a little bit of understanding as to why some of the youth find themselves in these positions.
The court started last year and it sits about twice a month. A report released today says people living in the former Lions Place are victims of organizational elder abuse. The Portage Avenue apartment block operated as a 55-plus nonprofit for decades. Last year, the Lions Club of Winnipeg and Lions Housing Centre sold it on the private market. The report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, called A Betrayal of Trust, says there are numerous harms related to the sale affecting tenants, harms it considers elder abuse. The report says the charities did not do enough to find an alternative to selling the building, and it outlines a number of recommendations, including launching an immediate public inquiry or audit and reinstating supports for the tenants. Manitoba Public Insurance has made cuts to its management team following an external review. The report found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at the public insurer. It says it wasn't always clear who was responsible for which initiatives, and a lack of clear responsibilities among leadership led to significant overspending on at least one project. Now, 32 positions, or about 1/5 of MPI's management team, have been axed. An MPI spokesperson says while the organization has parted way with a small number of leaders, the majority of the reduction, it says, have been reached by, quote, holding vacancies and right-sizing roles. Growing calls this morning for an international independent investigation into what happened at 2 hospitals in Gaza. They were both raided by the Israeli military, and now hundreds of bodies are being discovered on hospital grounds. CBC News has obtained video from the recovery operation at least one of these sites. You can hear more on this story coming up on World Report at 8. Well, another whiteout took over downtown Winnipeg last night. Thousands of hockey fans packing the streets outside Canada Life Centre deep into the night. But not everyone was there to cheer on the hometown Jets. Dylan Ham and his dad spent 2 days driving up from Colorado Springs. They took some heat for wearing the burgundy and blue of the Avalanche, but they loved the hockey-mad atmosphere in Winnipeg.
We don't have this in Colorado, you know. Hockey is like fourth in Colorado in the States, so this is amazing. We love it. We love it.
Jets fan Carson Lowe was in the Sea of White on Donald Street. He says more people should come downtown on nights when there aren't Jets games.
It's tough because there is that big stigma. People are really worried about safety, and I think it's really just about getting outside of your comfort zone. A lot of people, they don't actually come out and they try it out, but they just hear from other people like, oh, it's unsafe, but they're hearing those things from other people who haven't necessarily been down here.
Jets fans are going to have a week to get their outfits cleaned and be ready for the next whiteout. The Winnipeg Jets last night did lead the game in the second period. Mark Scheifele in the second period on ESPN, giving the Jets that 2-1 lead. But then came an avalanche. Colorado taking the game 5-2. Coach Rick Bowness says his team had some lapses.
We don't get our D involved enough. Like they're throwing a lot of pucks on there. They just throwing them at the net all over, and we're not getting enough of that. So we can spend more time in their zone, but the only way we're going to do that is to win some battles low and get our defense a lot more involved. And we're still passing up chances to shoot the puck.
Connor Hellebuck stopping 27 shots last night. The series is now tied at a game apiece, and it shifts to Colorado for games 3 and 4. And game 3 is a late one. Friday night, the puck drops at 9 Central Time. You can find more Manitoba news and breakdown of what happened at that game, how that game broke down for the Jets. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Caffeine on intravenous.
Yes.
Friday night. All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So street parties downtown, should they make a comeback overall beyond whiteouts? That's what we're asking this morning. 788-3205. Love to get some calls on. We've got time after 8. 788-3205. There's already a robust conversation on Facebook. You can join it on my Marcy Marcusa page, and we'll share some more comments through the show. Let's get into our regional forecast from CBC right now, though, with Abby Adeyemi.
We are still at 1 and clear. It's a tad chilly outside, but don't worry. Things are looking really, I'd call hopeful. I expect a bright day ahead, lots of sunshine, and we're heading to a high of 17. Brandon is currently at -4 with mainly clear skies. Folks out there can look forward to a sunny day, and the temperatures will be climbing up to 19 degrees. Moving further north to Thompson, it's currently at -5, and mostly cloudy conditions we see right now. But today will bring a mix of sun and clouds, and the temperature will reach around 9 degrees. Further north in Churchill, it's -10 with mostly cloudy skies. For folks in Churchill, expect mainly cloudy conditions to stick around, and the temperatures will be hovering around -4. Dauphin is at 3 degrees and clear. It's going to be a beautiful day with lots of sunshine for folks out there, and the temperature will get to 19 degrees. Gimli is at -5 with mainly clear skies. The Interlake region will enjoy mainly sunny conditions with temperatures getting to 14. And Steinbach, good morning. You are currently at -6 with mainly clear skies. Today will be sunny and nice. The temperature will climb to 18 degrees. And finally, Morris, you are at -4 with partly cloudy conditions. The Pembina Valley region will be seeing mainly sunny weather today with temperatures reaching 19 degrees. For Winnipeg, we're expecting lots of sunshine, a high of 17, and tomorrow even looks warmer and windier with a high of 22.
Well, we'll stick with today for now. Corey, what's up today in traffic?
Yeah, there's just a closure that caught someone off guard. Jill gave me a call. She drives to HSC every day. She's going through the exchange. Bannatyne from King to Princess is closed today. I looked online. That's expected to be, that work is expected to be done there until April 30th. So keep an eye out for that. She took William instead, so that's her advice for other folks maybe heading to HSC this morning through the exchange. Take William is your best way to get there. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on the show, the co-founder of a local organization that grants kids wishes for kids who have terminal illnesses wishes has herself passed away. Michelle Harrison died from lung cancer last week. In her final months as she fought cancer, she launched a fundraising campaign for the Dream Factory. She spoke to CBC's Faith Fundell about it back in December, about some of the most rewarding wishes that she helped grant.
Oh, there are many, and I think probably the most interesting ones are the ones that are so simple. You know, a young man who wanted to be a mechanic, and that that would never come to fruition. And so we worked with a local mechanic shop in his area. They took him in and they taught him how to be a mechanic until he passed away. It was something that he had dreamed of. So sometimes the wishes are incredibly simple. Sometimes they're very poignant. A young woman who lost her leg to cancer, her family kicked her out because of it, and she wanted to meet family in England. And we flew her over there, and they ended up having her live there, and she passed away with her family in England.
Those are all big deals. To each of the folks who make those wishes, what have you learned from all of these kids throughout all these years, particularly now as you face your own illness?
Well, I think, and I've been at the bedside of some of these children because they wanted me there. And what I learned was children have a different view. They haven't been necessarily made to fear it as we get older. I mean, it's a fear that we all have. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot from their attitude, their ability they wanted to be perfectly honest. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to talk about how they were feeling. And the fact that they were very peaceful about it, very accepting. And that's what I've learned in my own experience now that I'm applying to it, that I'm finding that it's much more healthy and better for the family. We talk openly about it. My grandsons talk about it. And so I think that's what I've learned is to be honest and be authentic about it.
That's Michelle Harrison in conversation with CBC's Faith Fundell back in December. Michelle Harrison died from lung cancer last week. She co-founded the Dream Factory 40 years ago. When it started, it was known as the Rainbow Society. Friends and family have said that raising funds for the Dream Factory was her last wish, as she explained there to Faith, a continuation of her life's work of bringing joy and hope to the children who the organization helps who are facing life-threatening illnesses. The Dream Factory was the one that shared about Michelle's death on social media, and they included a quote from her daughter that said, quote, "Your contributions honor my mom's memory and continue her lifelong belief in the transformative power of kindness and dedicated service," end quote. Well, we have an interview up next with Andrew Kusi, Executive Director of the Dream Factory, to talk a little bit about Michelle's legacy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so sorry for your loss. What was it like for you even just to hear Michelle there articulating what she wanted her own legacy to be?
It's funny listening to that clip back. I've had the real honor of being able to reconnect with Michelle and her family over the past year, to hear some of those stories from the earliest days of her involvement with the organization, of founding the organization. But perhaps more importantly, and something that I've been really proud of, is to be able to show Michelle how much of her spirit and her vision remains in the organization today. I hear her talk about a young man who wanted to become a mechanic. That's something that we would see today, and we would fulfill that dream in the same way. So much of the vision and values that she baked into this organization as she was founding it lives on today, and that's what legacy is all about.
How is everyone doing? How is staff remembering her, and how is everyone coping with the loss?
We are doing okay. We've been able to, like I said, spend a fair amount of time with Michelle and her family over the last year, and really driven by Michelle's living legacy. Michelle's a force, and I mean, the things that I learned about her were that giving back, connecting Manitobans, bringing people together, and supporting kids were central to who she was. And to anyone who knew her, it should come as no surprise that she wanted to keep that momentum going. And for her, in the midst of her difficult battle over the past several months to endeavor to create this Living Legacy Memorial Fund and reconnect with the Dream Factory and start raising funds again. It's just so truly Michelle, and it's an honor for our team, and we feel kind of the honor and privilege to be able to carry that work forward every day.
Well, we want to respect her wishes this morning by leaning into what the Dream Factory is working on now as it continues beyond the loss of her. So what do you have coming up? I know you've got some fundraising things coming up and some efforts to help more kids.
Of course. I'll start by saying if anyone wants to make a donation in memory of Michelle, we do have links to the GoFundMe Living Memorial campaign that she started on all of our social media channels. So find us on Facebook and you'll find a link there. In terms of the Dream Factory, we have our largest fundraising event of the year coming up this Friday. It's our Dream Maker auction, and it's a significant part of our ability to make more and more dreams come true for kids in Manitoba each year and support more families. So we'll have about 1,000 people joining us at the RBC Convention Center this Friday. If folks are not attending but would like to support, we have an online silent auction with 150 prizes as well as a 50-50 draw. All funds will go to supporting Manitoba kids and families throughout their child's medical journey.
Andrew, thank you so much for remembering Michelle with us this morning, and good luck with your fundraising efforts moving forward. And thank you for the work you do to grant these wishes to kids. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and just want to extend a huge, on behalf of the Dream Factory, our condolences as well to Michelle's family, but also our gratitude to have the privilege of continuing to carry her work and her vision forward.
Have a peaceful rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
Andrew Kusi, the executive director of the Dream Factory. And so, as you heard, they have a number of initiatives coming up. And Michelle's family has decided to keep that GoFundMe for Michelle up as well, so the money can continue to come in and support the Dream Factory and future wishes. The time right now is 7:46 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on the app or YouTube. And still ahead of the program today, after 8 o'clock, we're going to hear more about a temporary new fire hall that was making news yesterday. It's being built in Waverly West. It is something that people there have told CBC is long overdue. We did Urban Myths in Waverly West years ago, and that was the number one thing on their list. So some developments happened now in the story. But the city councillor for the area, Janice Lukes, is one of those that's been asking for it for years. She raises concerns, though, about the city's funding model when it comes to building new infrastructure for rapidly growing neighborhoods like Waverly West. So we're going to hear more, in case you missed that story yesterday, from Janice Lukes. We're going to hear more from her coming up after 8 o'clock on the show.
We've all heard of dad jokes. We want you to tell us a mom joke. That's any joke a mom would love. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival and CBC have created the ultimate comedy contest. Send us your best joke and you could get the chance to tell it on Information Radio. The best two jokesters will then face off at a live taping of the debaters at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival and win an amazing prize pack. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Don't overthink it. Get your jokes in. What an opportunity to be able to go to the Comedy Fest mega show and have fun at the debaters and maybe get on stage. They'll help you with your nerves. It's not like you're up there for an hour or something. You're just telling a joke. Barb Enders might win. Barb wrote in a mom joke. She said, this was a joke that my mom told me, actually. That's her interpretation of what a mom joke means. So she said, my mom told me this as a teen. Why do blondes have more fun? Why? Because blackheads are harder to squeeze. We also got a call on the listener line.
Good morning. My name is Dan Witchard. The joke du jour. It's been a house fire. The humans got out, the two dogs and a cat died. Gee, they turn up at the pearly gates. St. Peter says, well, that's unusual. We don't normally allow pets into heaven, but go talk to God. He's sitting over there on his golden throne. So they go over there, and God looks down at the German Shepherd and says, what do you believe? And the German Shepherd says, I believe in exercise and guarding my human. Oh, good for you. Sit over here on my left side. Looks down at the Dalmatian on his right side. Says, and what do you believe? Oh, I believe in getting the firemen to the fire as fast as they can and eating good food. Oh, good for you. Sit down at my right side. Looks down at the cat. Says, and what do you believe? And the cat looks up and says, I believe you're in my chair. Okay, have a good day. Thank you.
Oh, cat owners get that one especially. Tell us a joke, a mom joke, something you'd tell your mom, something your mom told you, or give us your best joke, 788-3205, or win at cbc.ca, and you just might be on stage at the Debaters at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, but more importantly, you get to go to one of the big shows. We have 2 pairs of tickets to give away. Well, next on the program, let's return to a story that's making news this morning about a new kind of court in Winnipeg. It's trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called Out of Custody Youth Intake Court. The goal is to get young people in front of a judge so they can get their case dealt with, but then also to get whatever kind of help they might need, whether that's moving cases to get through the system as fast as possible, even delaying court hearings until the youth are more ready. As part of a story on the new court, we were invited to follow a 14-year-old girl through the process so we could see how the new system would affect her. I spoke to CBC's Caitlin Garlick about what she saw and heard.
Good morning.
So why don't we start with learning more about the 14-year-old girl that I just mentioned, Caitlin?
Yeah, so first off, like with any young person who's been accused of a crime, we can't identify her, but I can tell you a bit about her. So I met her in court with her social worker last month, and she was there because she'd been charged with assault after she punched a worker at her group home last year. At the time that happened, she was 13 years old and addicted to alcohol. But when I met her a few weeks ago, that wasn't her life anymore. She'd stopped drinking, stayed out of trouble, and got ahead of schedule on her schoolwork. But this assault charge was still really hanging over her. And as she sat in a new kind of youth court that morning, she waited to see what was going to happen to her.
So tell us more about this court and how it's hoping and trying to help young people like this girl that you met.
So for that girl, she was kind of struggling over the last little while about what to do with her case. And one thing that the court was able to do for her was delay it a little bit so that she'd have time to hopefully be able to stop drinking and just get to a place where she really could make that decision for herself. And then once she was ready, because there was a judge and all the lawyers in the same room together, they were able to focus on getting her help and dismissing her charge that day instead of having her wait even longer. And the youth intake court also tries to solve problems in cases from the very start. So, for example, sometimes a youth will show up and need a mental health assessment, or they can't figure out why their legal aid application was rejected. And because the court has, again, all the judge and those lawyers present, they're able to sort out things like that pretty quickly. And for young people who don't show up to court, they've started putting together what they kind of unofficially call the Find Them list, which is sort of what it sounds like, a roster of names they then go through and call to see why they didn't make it to court that day instead of automatically issuing a warrant for them. And for Hilary Tash, a legal aid lawyer who helps run the new court, she says she's often reminded of how very young some of these kids are when she sees their signatures on court paperwork.
A young person's signature can tell us a lot about, where they're at from a cognitive perspective, from a developmental perspective. And so when we see a young person's, little signature that might look like the signature of a 4-year-old, we know that they're going to need support to get to court. They can't do that alone.
How did the court come about in the first place?
So it's been running for about a year now, and there were actually a few different things that led to that change. One of them was that there were such long delays before young people were getting to actually see a judge, and often in that time they were waiting, they were left without any specific lawyer attached to their case and really no connection to the justice system at all. So some of them just stopped showing up altogether, which could mean more charges against them for skipping court. And for those of them who did keep coming, more and more were ending up needing what's known as a conference, which is a meeting where they basically bring everyone who knows a young person together, from guardians and family members to teachers and action therapists, to help come up with solutions in their case. Those conferences can be pretty helpful in a case, but they also take a lot of time and work to do. And at a certain point, almost every single case coming through the courts needed one of them. One other reason was that most, if not all, of the young people who were ending up in court were struggling with some kind of issue that likely played a role in them landing there in the first place, from mental health to addictions to trauma. That's according to Associate Chief Judge Leanne Martin, who was a big part of the drive behind the new provincial courtroom.
If people saw or heard what was going on in their lives and what they were doing, I think might add a little bit of understanding as to why some of the youth find themselves in these positions and why they are offending in the way that they do.
So All that led to this new process where now, instead of waiting months for a charge to be dealt with, they bring everyone, the judge, the lawyers, the kids, their families, together in a room to sort out issues from the get-go, often now in a matter of weeks. And during the time that I sat in that courtroom, what struck me was the formality of the one side of the room. So you have the judge in their robe, the lawyers in suits, and then on the other side, filling most of the seats in the gallery, were just rows and rows of kids and teenagers in like sweatpants and sneakers. And Hilary Tash, that lawyer that I talked to, said that tension sort of represents what the new process is about. On the one hand, they're trying to show young people the court is serious about their case. It's a real judge, a real courtroom. But on the other hand, they also don't want to intimidate them.
We want to let them know that even if they have been in trouble before, they can do better in the future and that no one has given up on them. I think it keeps them on track when they've been able to see a judge and have that encouragement from a judge on the first day to turn things around.
That approach also translates into how they speak in the courtroom. It's not the same as being in an adult court. In this youth courtroom, you have a lawyer who will be talking about legal issues to a judge at the front of the room, and then they'll turn around and address the young person in the gallery directly and sort of go, here's the game plan, bud. Does that make sense? And just really try to connect with them.
Who are the young people who are ending up in this courtroom?
So these are young people who have been accused of something serious enough that they have been charged with a crime. Often the charges are things like shoving in a schoolyard or shoplifting or damaging property, but they've also been deemed safe enough to be in the community while those charges move through the court. So typically these are not young people who are charged with what we would maybe consider more serious offenses like homicide. Those youth are held in custody. They also really range in age, all the way from 12 years old at the low end up to 18. And for most of them, it's their very first time seeing the inside of a courtroom. And that's part of the idea, right? These are young people who have just barely entered the justice system. They're just at the edge of it. And everyone involved wants to see them never have to enter a courtroom again, hopefully. So what they're trying to do really is intervene early so these young people can hopefully move on and get their lives back on track. It's something Judge Martin, who we heard from earlier, says they keep in mind when they're deciding how to deal with these cases. Sometimes they find all that's needed is something like a reprimand, which is the official term for when a judge gives a young person sort of a stern lecture as a sentence in minor cases. And in other cases, she says charges are just stayed altogether.
And sometimes you get some pretty big smiles from those youth who are otherwise have been doing very well and are able to continue on going to school, leading their lives, and making sure that they don't have to come back to court if it's not required.
Now, you said it's been about a year since this court started. How are things going for young people who've, experienced it, been through it?
Yeah, so far it sounds like they're seeing really good things, including a drop in the number of cases involving young people that are being set for trial. And they're also looking now at whether there's room to expand the court. Right now, it's about twice a month. And for teens like that 14-year-old girl I talked to earlier, it's helped them move on with their lives. So her case has now been referred to restorative justice, something she said was a huge relief after having that one bad thing she did hanging over her for so long. Now she's looking forward to hopefully putting it behind her and thinking about how she might be able to build a different kind of future for herself.
Thank you very much for bringing this to the morning show.
You're welcome.
That is Caitlin Gowerlich, a reporter with CBC Manitoba here, and you can read more on her story on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And I'd encourage you to use all of our platforms because, you hear the reporters here, but then obviously you go online and you can get a more in-depth picture of what's happening, and you often get visuals and such. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as we can continue to improve our video service and streaming. And remember, the morning show is streamed all morning long, so subscribe there as we continue with that. It is 3 minutes to 8 now, and Heather Wells joins us with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a report released today says people living in the former Lions Place are victims of organizational elder abuse. That Portage Avenue apartment block operated as a 55-plus nonprofit for decades. Last year, the Lions Club of Winnipeg and the Lions Housing Centre sold it on the private market. We're going to hear more about this report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives coming up. And Manitoba Public Insurance has axed 32 people from its management team. The cuts come on the heels of an external review that found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at MPI. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's a fascinating report. I can't wait to hear more about that. And will that set a precedent? So we will hear about it, as Heather said, in the news coming up. We have national and international news coming at the top of the clock here at 8 o'clock. I can let you know that at this hour, it is bright and sunny downtown. A little bit cool, but we're going to get warm. It's 1 right now. We're going to head for a high of 17 in the sunshine. Manitine's closed King and Princess for another week. Between King and Princess for another week. You might come up against that, and if you're not ready for it, got to do a lot of turning around. So note it, go another way, and 788-3093 if you want to update us on any other issues. Coming up, we'll hear more about your thoughts on the street parties in Winnipeg. Should we make these regular occurrences outside of Jets games, for example? Yes or no? Call the listener line. We'll get calls and comments on. Also, we'll hear from Janice Lukes about Waverly West and the need and promise now of a temporary new fire hall coming.
On Q with Tom Power.
Up first, it's the one and only Jimbo.
Jimbo the drag clown got her revenge for getting dumped out of Drag Race Canada by winning Drag Race All-Stars. So Jimbo will be here to tell you about her new tour, how she mixes the art of clown with drag, and why she likes throwing bologna at her audience. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The history of artificial intelligence has deep roots in Canada, but technology writer David Skok worries that as AI grows, Canada risks being left behind. David Skok on how to get the future of Canadian tech back on track, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. More than a third of the police officers suspended in Ontario over the past decade faced allegations of gender-based violence. CBC has been digging through the data. It shows paid police suspensions have cost Ontario taxpayers more than $135 million. But victims of intimate partner crime say there is more to the problem than just money. Julie Ireton reports.
He wanted to harm me.
She's an Ontario police sergeant talking about her ex-husband, a constable. CBC has agreed not to reveal her name for her own protection. In 2019, there was a confrontation at home. He was arrested and suspended and eventually convicted of intercepting her private communications. Other charges were dropped. She stayed in policing, but she says she got little support.
No one came to me and said, okay, we've rallied the troops. This is what to expect. This is how you go back to work. None of that happened.
Her ex-husband is one of more than 400 officers across 44 Ontario police departments who've been suspended with pay over the past decade. More than a third of the allegations against those cops were for gender-based violence, including domestic abuse, sexual assault, and harassment. The numbers don't surprise Danielle McNabb. She's an assistant professor of criminal justice policy at Brock University in St. Catharines.
Police are disproportionately perpetrators of gender-based violence, particularly domestic violence. I do think that this really constitutes the tip of the iceberg. From what we know about the pervasive underreporting of gender-based violence.
The president of the Police Association of Ontario reviewed CBC's data showing the rates of police officers accused of gender-based violence. Mark Baxter says in those types of incidents, the union's role is to support everyone involved. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The U.S. Senate passed a new military aid package. Senators last night approved the $95 billion in aid going to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. President Joe Biden is expected to sign the bill into law later today. The Senate also voted in favor of a bill that would ban the popular app TikTok in the U.S. The CBC's Richard Madden has more on that. And Richard, what can you tell us about this bill?
Yeah, few issues unite a divided Congress than taking on big tech. And in this case, we saw a rare showing of bipartisan support. The Senate passed a bill that will now force TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, that's owned by the Chinese government, 9 months to sell the app to a non-Chinese owner. If not, it would be banned from U.S. app stores or hosting companies. Now, U.S. lawmakers briefed by intelligence agencies have long warned the Chinese government could access TikTok's user data to spy on Americans or spread propaganda or disinformation. Now, TikTok is wildly popular. More than 170 million Americans use it for entertainment or as an income source. But FBI Director Christopher Wray is sounding the alarms. Take a listen.
TikTok, for us, represents a national security concern. And the reason I say that is that TikTok's parent company is beholden to the Chinese government.
Now, under this bill, the earliest a ban would start would be January next year, notably after November's election. TikTok will likely be a major force during the election campaign for candidates to reach younger voters, so delaying the ban may help politicians avoid the backlash.
This bill has been in the works for some time. What are we hearing from TikTok?
Yeah, they're preparing for a legal fight with plans to challenge it in court under the First Amendment. That's according to a staff memo from TikTok's American executives over the weekend. But under this bill, President Biden could extend the deadline by another 3 months, possibly longer, if a sale is underway, so it gives TikTok some time.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Just as the U.S. Senate was in session,
Ceasefire!
Jewish anti-war protesters were staging a large protest outside Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer's Brooklyn house. They called for the U.S. government to stop funding Israel's war in Gaza. About 300 people were arrested. There were more demonstrations overnight at Columbia University. Police told protesters to clear out by midnight, but they refused to leave. The Supreme Court in the U.S. will hear arguments today in a case involving the state of Idaho and abortions. Idaho is one of several states that bans the procedure, with some exceptions. But a federal law requires hospitals to deliver emergency care that includes abortions. Freelance reporter Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
When do we want it? Freedom! When do we want it? Now!
Protests against abortion bans have become commonplace in America ever since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade nearly 2 years ago. That very court is now set to decide on a case that could limit abortion care during medical emergencies. At issue in Moyle versus United States is whether a federal law requiring hospitals to provide stabilizing treatment, including abortions in emergency situations, preempts Idaho law, which only allows abortions to save the life of the mother. Joseph Koza is an assistant teaching professor at Rice University.
The federal statute covers more than just death, so it's a big question around when can doctors intervene? Do they have to wait till the patient is on the brink of death, or can they intervene sooner?
Doctors in Idaho face up to 5 years in prison if convicted of performing an illegal abortion. The court's ruling is expected at the end of June, and the ramifications could be widespread. 14 states now ban the procedure, including Texas, where a court earlier this year ruled doctors don't need to perform emergency abortions. And there have been reports of pregnant women being turned away from emergency rooms. If the court rules in Idaho's favor, abortion access could become even more restricted, even in the most restrictive states. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
Farmers from the state of Tamil Nadu, India, are holding protests as they demand better compensation for their crops. Some carry skulls and bones to symbolize the farmers who have died by suicide. They say the situation is dire. They want India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, to follow through on his past election promises. One was to double the price of their produce.
Nobody bothered about the farmers. During the election, we are the backbone of India. After the election, they think that we are the slaves of India.
The latest round of farmers' protests comes as millions of Indians head to the polls for the country's elections. Australian police say they have arrested 7 teenagers in relation to a stabbing at a church. David Hudson is Deputy Commissioner of New South Wales Police.
We're talking 15, 16, 17-year-olds. The terrorism landscape and the radicalisation of youth online is a continuing problem for us.
He says the teens are accused of following an extremist ideology, and they are part of a network that includes the 16-year-old boy accused of stabbing a bishop in a Sydney church last week. Officials say the teens were considered an immediate threat, but investigators have found no evidence of specific targets for violent acts. Tesla's revenues have taken a big dive. The electric car giant released its quarterly results yesterday. Its earnings are down more than half over last year. Anis Hadari has more.
There's been a lot of talk about our upcoming vehicle line.
Elon Musk is telling Tesla investors expect new, more affordable models by 2025, maybe even this year.
So it's not contingent on any new factory or massive new production line. It'll be made on our current production lines much more efficiently.
Announcements like that are part of why Tesla stock shot up on Tuesday night after the closing bell rang. Because certainly Tesla's actual results in the first quarter weren't anything to celebrate. Net income down 55% compared to last year.
Tesla is finally acting like a car company.
Auto industry analyst Sam Furani says even though Tesla lost more money than experts predicted, the stock price might be going up because the company now says new models are coming sooner.
Their Model S is well over 12 years old now. Tesla needs to have these changes.
Musk also talked up self-driving robocars that you can hire, kind of like hailing an Uber. But Furani says realistically, that's years away.
There's a lot of stuff that Elon Musk has said that the company is focusing on in this period where there's not a lot to crow about on the automotive side.
That automotive side includes less demand for Tesla's electric vehicles, which may be why the company said yesterday it's cutting more than 6,000 jobs. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown sunny Winnipeg. It's 2 degrees on your Wednesday morning, and 1 is where we started. So we've doubled. Very exciting. We went from 1 to 2. It'll get better through the day. Abby's in a moment to talk about how we're going to continually warm up. Today's not going to be the warmest day of the week. I think tomorrow will, but today's going to give it a run for its money. Speaking of which, we tried to give the Colorado Avalanche a run for their money last night, but alas, you can't win them all, right? Jets fans, you can't win them all. We had won 9 in a row before the loss last night, but lots of excitement and emotions as people attended the whiteout party last night in Winnipeg. So stay tuned. We'll get some of the playoff action in. Also, we've got quite a robust conversation rolling this morning about whether or not overall street parties, public street parties, should return to the city of Winnipeg. We used to have them years ago. So downtown specifically, should we have them? Yay or nay? We have calls to play and we have comments to share. Plus, I should mention one news story that we've been following, and this is about something developing in Waverly West. A new temporary fire paramedic station is set to be built there. We're going to hear from Councillor Janice Lukes this half hour about that. She's been fighting for this for many years. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who has news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It is called the Out-of-Custody Youth Intake Court. We're going to hear all about it coming up as well. Manitoba Public Insurance has made cuts to its management team following an external review. The report found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at MPI. Now, 32 positions have been axed. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, the weather.
Yeah, we are currently sitting at 2 degrees under clear skies. We're in for a sunny day. The wind is gradually shifting to the south, and it might pick up a bit by noon period. Now, expect the mercury to get to a comfortable 17 degrees later today. And tonight, we'll see a few clouds drifting, but nothing to worry about. You talked about tomorrow. Yes, the trend of beautiful weather continues. We will start off clear, and then as the day progresses, we're going to be anticipating a mix of sun and clouds developing around noon, and then the temperature is going to be getting to a pleasant 22 degrees. So 2 and 2, I'll take it. Currently, we are at degrees, but tomorrow we're going to get to 22. Brandon is expecting a high of 19 degrees. Thompson will say mix of sun and clouds, high 9. Churchill mostly cloudy, and it will get to a high of -4.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get right now in Winnipeg. It is 2. Corey, what's up in the drive?
Yeah, really just one issue to keep an eye out for. Bannatyne between King and Princess closed today until April 30th for construction. So look out for that. Jill was driving there trying to get to HSC. She says head down William if you're heading in that direction instead is a better bet for you. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. 204-788-3093.
Well, the Winnipeg Comedy Festival is about to get underway. It starts next week, and we have a chance for you to go to the Debaters. Not just go to that show, taping of the Debaters, but to get on stage and tell a joke. And so we've asked you, we're going to have a judge these jokes, and we'll pick 2 winners, but we've asked you to tell us your favorite mum jokes. Here's a couple that came in on the line.
My name is Evangeline Kauke. My joke is, what do you call a pile of cats? And the answer is a mountain.
Good morning, Winnipeg. My name is Annie. I have a classic Manitoba mom joke. Here it is. What does the mommy buffalo say to her baby buffalo when they're leaving on the first day of school? Are you ready, Manitoba? Bye, son. Have a great day, everybody.
I love that she set up the answer. Are you ready? Because the punchline's coming. That was super cute. So mom jokes, take that however you want. Whether it's a joke that, is clean, lovely to tell, might be shared by a mom, so to speak. Or if it's something your mom, would share. We hear all about dad jokes, so we figured we'd spin that around. Tell us your mom joke for a chance to get on stage and share it at the Debaters taping at the Comedy Festival coming up. It does start through the end of this week into next week. And so we have lots of opportunity to share more about the shows coming up. But if you want to go and you want to get on stage, share a joke. So 788-3205, it's that simple, or email win@cbc.ca. And thanks to people already who are weighing in. Well, the listener line's been busy this morning, not just with people telling jokes, but to another story now, also with people weighing in on the idea of street parties making a return to downtown. Now, years ago, we had Get Together downtown. That was Glen Murray, the early 2000s, and they would shut down Portage and Main for a 3-day stretch. It came at a huge cost, but it did bring 50,000 people into the downtown area. Those parties often included huge bands, like big stages set up. Great Big Sea was one of them one year, Chantal Kreviasek, and people would just pour into the area to watch these shows. But the cost was really big. They ended up getting canceled. They were always controversial. The whiteout parties we're seeing for the Jets have us asking again and thinking about whether or not some return to some kind of a public party downtown is something you would like. So you're weighing in on that.
Hi, my name is Lisa Backstead. I'm against stuff like these games, these whiteouts and stuff. We are so badly in debt. Our deficit, like every day I listen to how much our interest is. I have 2 sons. I don't want them to die working to fix these mistakes. I want the future for children to be a better place. This is way more important. And the noise downtown, I lived downtown for 1 year and I moved. I couldn't take it. Thank you.
Call with your opinion and perspective on this idea about whether or not we should have a return to some type of regular public street parties in the downtown area. 788-3205. Now, you are writing like crazy on Facebook on this question. That's my Marcy Marcusa page, acts as a show page. Cormac McCann says, after everyone is housed and fed, who call Winnipeg home? We can discuss this, so to speak. So Cormac writing in with that point of view. Mary Mazur saying only if businesses pay the cost, our taxes are needed for far too many things and should not be spent on parties of that size. Let big businesses foot the cost as marketing and will recoup with increased clients being downtown. And if they lack funds, let them scale back. Other points of view, though, on this coming in as well. Teresa Chuba writing in, yes, it unites people. It helps local businesses. It's a great experience for visitors to the city. Glenn Ingram saying it may help cops get back on the beat again to clean up some of the hard drugs and the muggings, just referring to some things that we've seen on the rise all over the city, but certainly in the downtown area as well. Mel Martineau saying, I think smaller but regular events could be the way to go. If the city could have better walk, bike, bus infrastructure, it would be less disruptive for folks who live downtown. Right now, we basically give them a loud traffic jam in their backyard. And finally here, I have time for share one more. Ian McCausland saying, working the free bike valet last night at the Whiteout Party has convinced me if we had regular secure places to leave a bike, way more people would embrace active transportation and come downtown. So a lot of this is about parties. A lot of this is about re-energizing downtown and bringing people back downtown. But I am asking specifically if you'd like to see regular street parties of some type return to the area. 788-3205. Well, now let's take you to the party that was downtown last night. And by the way, there was a hockey game too. It was a tough loss for the Jets. If you haven't yet plugged into what happened, Colorado took it 5-2, but it didn't dampen the spirits of the fans that were at the Whiteout Party. CBC's Jim Agapito was there as well.
Are you guys excited for the game?
Yeah, we are! We're so excited! Let's go, Jets! Delaney Zimmerman!
Delaney, I gotta ask, the game is about to start. How excited are you right now to be here?
I'm pumped! You know, the atmosphere, the energy, it's so good right now. It's really good. It's really high.
And what are you hoping happens tonight?
I'm hoping the Jets win. That's what we're all hoping. Jets are going to bring it home. They're going to win.
My full name is Daniel Alexander Barrows. Daniel, you saw the last goal. What's your reaction to the last goal?
I think we have the best penalty kill in the whole league, and I think the whiteout is the best tradition in all of sports history. We love the Jets, we love the community, and we come to these games and we know we're gonna win, because that's what our team does.
My name is Braden Connor Rebeck. They just scored a goal. What went wrong there? What happened?
You know, I'm looking at it right now. It's honestly, for Hellbuck, it's not his fault. It's a tough deflection. You know, we got to bounce back from it. You know, honestly, we're 2-2 right now. And you know who's going to score next? Adam Lowry. That's all I got to say.
Alessandra Pellegrino. Christina Colatruglio.
It's down right now. It's the third period. It's 4-2. How are you guys feeling right now?
I'm a little disappointed, but I mean, there is time left, so I'm feeling positive that we can come back.
Now, the energy here has been quite impressive. What's it like to be at the Whiteout right now? You know?
Super fun. Well, it's nice to see the community all getting together and supporting the Jets. If there were more events like these, I feel like getting community together, I feel like it would bring more people to downtown. Agreed. Hayden Griffiths.
How old are you?
9.
How do you feel being at the Whiteout watching a Jets game?
Very good. This is my first time. I thought it'd be scary, but now it's not.
The Jets are down right now 4-2. What do you think's going to happen?
I think they're going to score 2 goals, and then they're going to get a goal in overtime and win the game.
I mean, it is late. It's a school night, but how do you feel about being up? I don't know if it's past your bedtime, but being here right now.
I feel very great. I don't know what's going to happen about school. I'm probably going to be late.
Was it worth it, though, to watch the Jets?
Yeah. Go, Jets, go!
My name is Carson Lowe. Carson, there's less than 5 minutes of the game left. We're losing to Colorado 4-2. How are you feeling?
You know, it's difficult. Over the regular season, we're a better team, but this type of stuff happens, and we just got to kind of battle back, and hopefully we can pull out a win here today.
What's going wrong right now?
I'd say the defense has been pretty sloppy. We're struggling to get the puck out of our own zone, and we're paying for it, obviously, right? We're giving up easy goals and just sloppy mistakes that really shouldn't be happening. At the moment, we got to tighten up the defense and make the offensive possession count. We've got 4 minutes left in the game. Every single shot's going to count as much, you know, it's going to count so much. So we gotta really dial in here.
Justin St. Laurent. Honestly, it was a tough
it was a tough battle for the boys tonight. I hate to say it, but some poor defending on the Winnipeg end. Just not there tonight. But overall, great game, great atmosphere here at the Whiteout. No complaints whatsoever. Still a great game. Hoping for a late one here to bring the game back together, but as of right now, it just stands where it is.
And it never happened. CBC's Jim Agapito at last night's whiteout party. Thank you, Jim. Jim was up till 2 in the morning. He was still, I think, here at CBC. The Jets' first away game of the series is going to be even later. Friday night in Denver. Puck drop at 9. Sunny and 2 going for 17 today, and people who live in Waverly West are finally going to get a temporary fire paramedic station. Some say it's long overdue for an area that's now home to approximately 57,000 people. The announcement was made yesterday. There was a sod turning. The mayor was there, so was the premier and Janice Lukes, who's the area councillor. Station 15 is going to be built in the coming months at Eaglewood Park. The mayor says the cost is $6.8 million. Janice Lukes, as I mentioned, was not only there, she spoke at the event, but she raised concerns about the long delay in getting that station built in this rapidly growing part of Winnipeg.
This is a long-awaited day for the residents of Waverly West. As you know, the southwest corner of Winnipeg has been the fastest growing area in the city for the past 10 years. According to Stats Canada, 30% of Winnipeg's entire population growth has moved here. The sad fact of the matter is, we should have been standing here 5 years ago doing this sod turning for a fire hall. And I'm going to share a few more facts today that should concern everyone here. I dare say no one has felt the heat or taken the heat for not having a fire hall for residents more than myself and the good men and women of the Fire Paramedics Division. I'm a councillor who's very connected to the residents, and I'm constantly saying, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Jasmine, you can verify that. It's coming. That's why I'm wearing my red jacket today. I'm still on fire over this issue, so bear with me. Bear with me. I want to thank Mayor Gillingham, who was councillor at the time, for listening to me and for including this funding in past budgets. A fact, this fire hall is a critical piece of city infrastructure that is directly needed to support the growth, just like other pieces of infrastructure are needed to support growth. We need quality roads for transportation and goods movement, recreation facilities, and sewer treatment plants. But here's another fact. There's only one taxpayer. And the allocation of one tax dollar is shocking. It's 10 cents for the city of Winnipeg, 40 cents for the province of Manitoba, and 50 cents for the federal government. So think about this. I left my dime in my pocket, in my purse. We, the city, take our 10 cents and we try very hard to support growth, to build this quality infrastructure. We've seen the potholes this year. We're getting a fire hall. We're having to take out debt for our community center. And we cannot build sewer treatment plants, or we cannot build in certain areas of the city because we don't have sewer capacity. We need to deliver all kinds of services in a growing city. Municipalities and cities manage and maintain approximately 60% of the public infrastructure and amenities that drive our economy and quality of life in Canada. The federal government has committed to 500,000 new Canadians a year, each year, for the next 3 years. 1.5 million people are coming, and in my 10 years of experience as councillor in this rapid growth community, clearly tells me cities simply won't be able to accommodate the growth. Now, to be clear, and I really want to be clear on this, Canada needs immigration. We need families. We need a young workforce. So I'm very pleased to see the federal government is providing funding for housing to help us accommodate these new Canadians. We have refugees down in our homeless centres in Winnipeg because they don't have a place to go. But for every home built, there must be corresponding infrastructure. We can't even build in parts of the city, as I noted, because we don't have sewer capacity. St. Norbert, White Ridge, parts of downtown and more. So we have this 10 cents and we're expected to build all this corresponding infrastructure, which is virtually impossible with the projected growth we're going to be experiencing. And to bring it home to the grassroots, and this is where city councillors work, the grassroots, this is what we're seeing here in Waverly West. Massive, rapid growth and a long overdue fire station. And again, like I noted, once council increases our debt load for another $23 million, we'll be able to fund the recreation campus. But this model isn't sustainable. I want to thank the Premier for putting out a budget with many good things in it, but in my opinion, the best sentence in the entire budget, page 50. Over the coming year, we will work with municipal stakeholders, including the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, the Association of Manitoba Bilingual Municipalities, and the City of Winnipeg to develop a reliable, flexible, multi-year funding model that will work for all Manitobans. We need this new funding model because municipalities, because, you know, like everyone has said here, we're all partners in building our city, our provinces, and Canada. We have to do a better job of being partners. We need change. We need to change the model. I love growth. I love immigration. But when it comes at such a rapid pace from federal immigration policies, I don't think it's fair to Canadians, to new Canadians, to all new Canadians.
So that is Janice Lukes. She's a city councillor for Waverley West, and she was speaking yesterday about the new temporary fire hall that's being built in the area over the next months, but also, as you heard there, with some concerns about how this came to be and how long it took for this to come to be. If you want to read more about the story, or if you live in the area, reach out to CBC or check out our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, we're coming up to news time, and then, of course, the next local show on the air after us is Radio Noon. Janet Stewart is the host, and she's here to talk to you about today's call-in conversation.
Good morning, Marcy.
Good morning.
We get warnings all the time in our inboxes in the media about scams, all these scams going around. Well, there's one that came out recently from the Brandon Police about a text message that was going out purporting to be from Brandon Police, saying, click here for more information. Click, of course, right? Total fraud. So what's going on? We've got a police officer coming in to join us today, Sergeant Dana McCallum, to talk about just how good the scammers are getting and how many people are falling for us. So falling for it. Join us for Radio Noon.
So if you want to call in to share with Janet what maybe has come your way about frauds and how they're trying to get you, or if you want advice to work through it, that's the call in between 12:30 and 1 right here. But we always like to mention it at the end of the morning show, because if you can't make it over lunch, you can leave a message. 788-3797. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is sunny. It's 2 degrees. That south wind is going to help us warm up, along with the sunshine today, a high of 17. A new court in Winnipeg is trying to keep young people out of the justice system by welcoming them into it. It's called the Out-of-Custody Youth Intake Court. The goal is to get young people in front of a judge so fast they can get the help they need sooner. And to show them the court is taking their case seriously without intimidating them, lawyer Hilary Tash runs this new court.
We want to let them know that even if they have been in trouble before, they can do better in the future and that no one has given up on them.
The youth court sits about twice a month, and since it started, there's been a drop in the number of youth cases going to trial. A report released today says people living in the former Lions Place are victims of organizational elder abuse. The Portage Avenue apartment block operated as a 55-plus nonprofit for decades. Last year, the Lions Club of Winnipeg and Lions Housing Centre sold it on the private market. The report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, called a betrayal of trust, says there were numerous harms related to the sale that affected tenants, harms it considers elder abuse. The report says the charities did not do enough to find an alternative to selling the building, and it outlines a number of recommendations, including launching an immediate public inquiry or audit and reinstating supports for tenants. Manitoba Public Insurance has made cuts to its management team following an external review. That report found too many managerial layers led to confusion and instability at the public insurer. It says it wasn't always clear who was responsible for which initiatives, and a lack of clear responsibilities among leadership led to significant overspending on at least one project. Now 32 positions, or about 1/5 of MPI's management team, have been axed. Well, once again, thousands of Winnipeggers flooded downtown for a whiteout street party last night.
Go Jets, go! Go Jets, go! Go Jets!
Bo Downey was in the crowd outside Canada Life Centre. He thinks these whiteouts are a rite of spring for many.
Other than concerts, it's the one chance that adults have to go wild, right? To yell at the top of their lungs about people wondering what's wrong with that guy. So it's just it's a chance for people to let loose. It's like the light switch for Winnipeg to turn on after winter is the whiteout. Yeah.
Another Jets fan, Ty Olotu, was in the crowd on Donald. He says more ticketed events outdoors in the area could help bring more people downtown.
I feel like if there was things happening like this, like organized events and just like people, interacting with other people within the community, I feel like that's a 10 out of 10.
And you can imagine there was a lot of cheering last night when this happened. Beautiful goal by Mark Scheifele on ESPN in front of a sold-out crowd, giving Winnipeg a 2-1 lead in the second period. But then the Jets are covered by an avalanche. Colorado takes the game 5-2. The series now is tied at 1 win apiece. Jets' Kyle Connor says the loss hurt.
Stings. No, you never like losing a home game here. I'm sure they're happy with the split. At the same time, we got to respond. So it's we got to dictate that play going into their barn, and it's about everyone in here about trying to respond.
Winnipeg now gets a couple of days to regroup. Game 3 in this playoff series moves to Colorado, and it will be another late one. Puck drop Friday night is 9 o'clock Central. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get into one last look at what's happening with the weather forecast. Abby?
I'll tell you, it's a sunny day across board. Clear skies, that's what we'll see then. It's going to be sunny and breezy. We're going to see highs ranging from 9 to 19. The cold parts of the province will be Churchill, who's going to be seeing a high of -4 degrees. But in Winnipeg, we're heading to a high of 17 degrees, sunny and breezy.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, one last time. What's up?
Yeah, Bannatyne closed today until April 30th between King and Princess. So if you're heading towards HSC area, says Jill, take William. That's your best bet to get where you got to go without disruption.
Thank you to Corey, to Abby, to Brad, all on our live crew this morning. Also in the news center, Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo. Thank you, guys. Thank you to our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson, and all the hardworking APs. I know I've been shouting out Jim, but the overnight AP, whoever that is, it's on a rotating basis, always ends up staying up real late. But maybe not later than after 2 a.m. when you're covering playoff parties and whiteouts downtown. So thanks to everyone who works so hard on all of our shows. So Radio Noon's coming up next local programming, and then we have Up to Speed between 3 and 6 o'clock this afternoon with Faith Fundal. I really am hoping we'll keep this conversation going about the idea of having regular street parties in downtown Winnipeg and whether or not you think that there's a place for that in our city. And if so, what should that look like? Should it look like closing off streets permanently so we have a place? Should it look like smaller parties on a, event basis, so to speak, not prescribed to be one regular big thing? Or should they be huge like they were back in the day in the early 2000s where, things were shut down for 3 days right at Portage and Main? And then, of course, who foots the bill? What are your concerns? Would you be willing to pay more? Do you think it should be up to business owners? There you go. There's 12 questions to think about. 788-3205 if you want to weigh in or join that conversation online. Take care, be well, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're going to be back tomorrow with another live edition of Information Radio here on CBC. You can find anything you heard on the program this morning on the app a little bit later in the morning, but it will all be there on the CBC Listen app. And The Current is coming up next on 89.3.